Everybody to our July 20th special meeting. Calling the meeting to order. We have two orders of business for tonight, or today, I should say. Starting with agenda item 2.1, which is a proposed discussion of the proposed Southworks tax abatement. I can sort of turn it over to my colleagues who certainly have a lot more information about this than I do, although we've all been given some information to read prior to this meeting. So I'm not sure if Eric, if you'd like to
I can start.
that.
Sure. So I know there are some folks here who know a lot about this and other folks who are new and may not know. So forgive me, I'm going to try to strike a balance. First of all, just personal disclosure. This is a project that is going to take place in what's known as Southworks, which you might know is the former Emerson chain factory, or Morse chain factory. It was Morse and then Emerson, and it's a factory on South Hill, just downhill of Aurora Street as it goes up to IC. Very large project. It's about 3 blocks from the Commons at the closest point on Turner Place, and then it goes up about a mile. Enormous property that you may not see because you can't see it from the road, but if you're at Wegmans and you look up, you can see. So there's repurposing of existing industrial buildings and then new greenfield investment to create a mixed use residential, commercial, light industrial neighborhood. And full disclosure, before I came to the Board of Education, I was on the planning board. When I was on the planning board for several years, I was chair, and I conducted the environmental review of this project. So I had personal involvement. So that I didn't personally do, but we brought in environmental consultants and lawyers and so on. So just want to disclose that.
Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, so we also, for new members, had Rich John, who at the time was the chair of the IDA, come to a finance committee meeting. I believe that was 2 years ago. And we had a discussion about this because the IDA passed a general abatement for 20 years for the entire site. Currently, we have an applicant, Beacon Development, based out of Boston, that is applying for a further abatement, this time of 30 years. So the proposal is to build 230 residential units in mixes of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. And they're asking for a tax abatement. And the terms of the tax abatement are really important to pay attention to. The standard abatements are 7 and 10-year abatements where the developer creates value added. So let's say you have a property that's worth $100,000 and someone comes in, it's got an old derelict building on it. Someone comes, knocks the old building down and builds a new building on top of it. They always pay sort of tax on the existing value. The question is, how soon do they start paying tax on the value added, the new value? And usually developers say, hey, it's very hard to get going. If we could get a break the first couple of years, then we could kind of get speed. So normally like on a 7 or 10-year abatement, you pay 10% of the value added the first year, 20% the second year. And so over 10 years, you build up to pay 100% of value. Yeah.
So you're talking about while it's still being built?
After it's finished.
After it's finished.
Yeah, after it's finished. So normally there's like a sort of a 10-year catch-up period. Southworks was controversial, in my view at least, because it was a 20-year period. This proposal is, as I understand it, really groundbreaking in that they've asked for a 30-year abatement. But it's not 30 years at which they go from, zero value added up to the full value added. It's 30 years of just abatement. We're not building up. Okay, so specifically,
so no taxes paid for 30 years.
Well, not no taxes. So they have to me a tax scheme that I haven't seen. So normally, again, forgive me for all this. The assessment office assesses properties. If it's a residential property, they assess it based on comparable resale value.
Okay.
You want to sell your house, you look at the house next door, you can move that. The assessment process for commercial property is different. Okay, so for commercial property, the assessment's based on the current use. You have a building, you're operating a bakery. They look at how profitable the bakery is and they evaluate the tax, or the assessment rather, based on the profitability of the bakery. They have to evaluate based on a bakery. They're not allowed to come to you and say, hey, you should stop running a bakery, you should open a nail salon, right? So it's sort of based on the value of the current use. The projected current use of this building is affordable housing, which is going to have below market rents. So just to give you some numbers, they're proposing $100 million of construction costs. But right at the bat, they're saying that their estimate of the assessment is going to be 12 million. So that raises, if you're going to spend $100 million on construction, and then immediately the assessment is going to be 12 million, what it tells you is that, as a standalone project without any kind of subsidies or government help, this is not a profitable project. But $100 million construction, and it's going to, be assessed at 12 million because the rent coming in is going to be below market rent. Okay. So then normally the idea would be that the property would be assessed based on the $12 million, which is its current use. The state of New York is saying you can build affordable housing. So you would look at then applying our rate of $16 per $1,000 of the assessed value on the 12 million, which comes to about 180,000 coming into the district. All right. But they don't want that. Instead, they want the first year taxes to be 12% of net operating income. All right. So I get right, net operating income. So what that means,
crazy.
Huh?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So what that means is that you look at all the cash that comes in, okay, that's the income. You subtract off sort of current expenditures, so utilities, the manager on site, routine maintenance, sort of just routine operating expenses. So revenue minus operating expenses, and this is in the industry, Todd can correct me, but kind of a measure of how much cash the building is bringing in, and then you see if that cash flow is sufficient to cover the financing and the taxes and so on. So they want 12% of the NOI. Okay, this is an issue for us for a couple of reasons. One is that they determine the NOI, right? The NOI is not determined by the assessment office, which is an objective third party, but the first year NOI is determined by the developer, who would have every incentive to minimize revenue the first year and maximize expenses the first year to make the first year NOI as low as possible. And they would do that because the first year NOI is what determines the tax for the next 30 years. So the 12% of the first year NOI is the tax bill for year one. And for year two, it's that plus 2%. So, so the first problem, so the three issues. One is that 12% NOI is for sure going to be a lot less than the normal rate on the assessed value. I talked to one other developer in town who says that he normally pays about 25 to 30% NOI. So A, the assessed value is lower than the market value because of the reason I just said. B, they want to pay less than the $16 per thousand on the lower, on the assessment of 12 million. They want to pay the NOI. They determine the NOI, and they're proposing the 12% NOI, where most people are paying 25 to 30%. And then moving forward, whatever NOI they calculate in year one is the basis for the taxes they pay in year 2, 3, 4, up to year 30. And then the increase on the 12%, or rather the 12% of the NOI, is 2%. So who here in this room would like a deal where their property taxes will go up 2% per year? I have to look historic, but I think it's been in the order of 4, 5, 6%. So if their tax rate is going up 2% per year and everyone else in town is going up 4%, let's say, even though their nominal tax bill is going up, their share of the pie, instead of building up to the full market value, actually shrinks every year. So they pay lower and lower taxes. So, I could have all this wrong, but my expectation is they're doing this because the $180,000, which is the sort of the book rate on the $12 million assessed value, whatever this 12% of NOI is going to be, it's going to be less than 180,000. Otherwise, they wouldn't ask for it.
Of course.
So it's going to be close enough to essentially this property being built, paying little to no taxes, pretty much for the next 30 years. Okay, so that's the revenue side in terms of ICSD. Now, what is the expense side to ICSD? Thank you to Todd. I asked Todd to look at his books and give me a kind of an estimate of how many children he thinks would be in a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. Todd just sent me the information, obviously an estimate, but the best number we have from Todd is 150 kids. Okay. The number that we use internally as marginal cost per kid, and I'm going to get too wonky in economics here, but there's fixed costs and marginal costs and all kinds of costs, but we internally use $25,000 per kid as a rough cost of a kid walks in the door. On average, that cost is $25,000. So 25,000 times 150 kids brings our expenses just short of $4 million a year. So this is a deal that's going to generate $4 million a year of added expense to us and bring in basically no revenue. Now, to be fair, I want to be fair here. We look at the average, right? There are properties in College Town that pay a lot of taxes, that are full of college students that have few to no kids. And we gratefully take their money. So this is an example of one that, you know, goes in the other direction. I'm not making a value statement here. I'm agnostic about it. I just want to put before the board that the numbers are, this is going to cost us just shy of $4 million, this particular project, and it's going to pay us nothing. And then the question is,
Per year.
Per year.
Not so over 30 years.
Right, it's
Per year.
yeah, it could actually go.
yeah, it's going to cost us, it's
Portion.
in today's dollars.
Yeah.
It's going to pay little to no taxes, you know, shortly less than 180,000. I don't know how much less. And that the amount it's going to pay us is going to be less than 180,000, probably substantially less, and only grow at 2% a year, where the estimated number of kids is going to cost us $3.75 million. Unlike the 2% tax number, which the tax revenue, which can only go at 2% a year, again, the cost per student is probably going to grow at 4 or 5% per year, as it has historically.
Yeah.
So can I just stop there? And I know it's a lot of numbers, and I guess I have to take questions or.
First of all, I feel like I was just in a great economics class. You taught me a lot just now.
I was thinking that
I like
what it's like with Professor Playlight.
Okay. So, thank you, but I do have questions,
Yeah,
and forgive
yeah.
me if they sound
No,
elementary.
I could be wrong on all this.
Is there any model in Ithaca currently that has a tax abatement that we serve for the kids?
Well, I did a quick look. I looked, for example, at my colleague Todd Fox's property on Senate. You can tell what's your is it 30 years, Todd?
Yeah, so it's different. There's a structure that comes from the federal government in New York State that everyone that does affordable housing projects through HCR and LIHTC, they have to follow. And it's like this is what works, this is what we think is fair, and here's like your bet. Everybody's saying like we don't agree with that, we want to create our own system. So that right there is a huge red flag. There's a couple things I want to add to it that might be an answer some questions. So that's one piece. The 12% NOI, it rewards a really shitty operator, right? Like if you have a really good operator like INHS, and you take the art house, I think everyone knows about the art house, and you have a casino come in, and they say, man, we're doing a really bad job operating. We need to have 24-hour security. We're gonna put in 4 security guards for the first year to make sure it's really, really safe. And they have no NOI because their first year budget, they're gaming the system, or they're bad operators, so they need to actually put these people in. So that's one piece. Or you can easily game the system and say, hey, we don't need the security guards. Let's put in 4 extra security guards at $30,000 a week, and we'll have 0 NOI. So like there's a reason that they don't allow people to create your own NOI. There's a system. If you can't meet this NOI, the state will not approve your affordable housing projects. You don't qualify, basically. And they're saying we don't need to follow state laws. So that to me is the biggest red flag. That's like a non-starter.
What, I'm sorry, just to understand.
NOI, net operating income. So
No, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I don't. So are you saying that what they are proposing is against state law?
it's not against state law. They're not following state guidelines. They're basically like, if I apply for a project, I have to meet the state guide, like because HCR is the one funding it. I've never
Is
seen.
HCR involved in this?
They should be if they're gonna get LIHTC credits. But HCR is not responsible for the local tax payments. It's like, you're going to Ithaca and you're like, hey, we're gonna create our own thing because we think we need our own thing, and it's bullshit. And if Ithaca signs off, if the IDA, which is the organization that handles it, and the planning board, everyone, they're like, this is okay, and you go to HCR, HCR is like, good deal for you guys, we're gonna give you your LIHTC credits. They're responsible for the LIHTC credits, they're the ones who are setting the guidelines. Everyone follows the guidelines. These guys are kind of creating their own
What is
process.
LIHTC credit?
Low income housing tax credits. So HCR is the organization that like facilitates the applications, they manage everything, and then low income housing tax credits are the vehicle that they use in order to do the abatements. One caveat I wanted to add to, so yeah, they would probably be 150 kids, give or take, in this building. The hard thing to determine is how many of those kids are already in the district. Right, they could move, right? But it's right across from South Hill. How many of those kids are going to South Hill? What's the impact on South Hill? So like, there's a lot of nuances. I was talking to my consultant. He said, a good number to maybe use would be 65% or 70% already in the district. But still, you're talking about around 50 new kids at $1.4 million, whatever it is. $1.4 million times 30 years. Like we cannot absorb that regardless. So whether it's $1 million or $3 million, like we can't absorb it. So I mean, for me, it's almost like we could go to them and say, hey. We could pretty much determine, we could ask them, like, if they should have done market studies. How many kids are you looking to, are you local, how many are new? And then say, hey, based on that, it costs the Kissimmee School District 30,000 a year. So times 50 times 30,000, that might be like an easy, quick resolution to kind of that piece.
Just follow on piece,
Yeah.
that's an excellent point. We don't know how many are net new, we're
Yeah.
moving around other
Yeah.
things. But one thing that I think the county should consider, and I don't think they're considering is, if they pull a student from, say, Newfield, the state aid on a Newfield student is substantially higher than the state aid on an Ithaca student. So
Yeah,
the county is actually, if they do, pull a kid from Newfield to Ithaca, we're actually losing as a
That's a
county
really
state
good point.
aid.
Yeah.
So that kind of is a balance to your point. So
Yeah.
none of these we know,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. yeah, it could be hard to actually get the final number. We just know right now, like, this doesn't work, period.
I'm also curious, just because you're here and the financial.
I'm strategically staying silent because Garrett has covered every bit of this.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that
Excellent.
I created a memorandum for the board that Emily has, so we'll hand that out to you. It summarizes everything Garrett just brought up.
Okay.
So you have that to take with you.
Thank you.
Again, just for the state aid for us is like something like 25-30% of the cost per student. And the state aid in Newfield's the opposite, so it's like the state pays about 70%. So when you move a kid across the boundary line, you get as a county, a big reduction in state aid.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, you know what, that's a good point, like. There's between school district and county, so like there, it might be higher than 30% are new, it could be 50%, like, we don't know that, we just know that already it doesn't work, right, like.
I'm curious, so. What would happen if it was not approved? If their request was not approved, what happens to the project, what happens to?
They'd have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a project that could be approved. Like, you can propose something, gets denied, propose something gets denied, and just keep coming back and back. There's one more thing I want to add, I
Do
noticed.
they give feedback when they deny
Yeah,
you?
yeah. There's one thing I just saw on this just now, it's like the Empire State Development Infrastructure Funds. Is that part of the 10 million that they got for the downtown? Because I heard a couple days ago that they're trying to get money up there. And then if they would have to change their regulations, and the people that were on State Street are all pissed, like, wait a minute, we're gonna get less money because you're gonna get money up there, which might not even happen. So if 6 million, they're using that in their capital stack. And they might not get 6 million, then they're gonna already have a $6 million delta. They're gonna need to find like 6 million more. So that's $6 million more that they're gonna need to find. It's just, I don't see how it works.
It's kind of a separate issue,
Right.
I think I want to bring to the board, but I'm on that committee, not as a school board member, just as an
Oh,
individual,
good.
because
Yeah.
my experience in the planning board. We met the first time and the mayor is proposing to, it's the downtown revitalization initiative. The mayor is proposing to change the boundaries, so we go up to right to the
Right.
border of Southworks.
Yeah.
I don't know if that ties into this or not, but.
Yeah, because I heard that they're trying to get money for Southworks. Is that?
Well, they're trying to move the project boundaries right to the edge of Southworks and not to include Southwark.
So
But
part of Southworks is in the city and part is in the town.
yes, that's right. So they want to move it right to Turner Place.
Okay.
So that, I think the main reason being that they would then be able to add city infrastructure connecting the commons to Southworks at the expense of the Empire State Park.
Yeah, and the reason they need to do that is because they probably need the infrastructure regardless, so they're basically helping support the developer by taking money. But yeah, I know.
I'm conjecturing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, the mayor wants the downtown revitalization initiative. Does anyone know what this is? You may have seen in the paper, city applied for $10 million for downtown revitalization. They want it. They put together a committee to vet projects and propose them. I'm on the committee. We had one meeting. And at that meeting, the mayor proposed that the core downtown area, which is basically, you can look at it, it's all online, be expanded from the commons 3 blocks up the hill to Southworks. For reasons for just conjecture, but we don't know.
Right. And if it doesn't have, if they need that money, that's again $6 million less that they have for the project, which means they're gonna ask for a bigger tax abatement than what they're already asking for, because it's the only way to fill the gap, So it's a separate issue than what we're talking about, but it's all tied together and kind of negative impact what we're talking about.
Other questions from board members before we move on?
It's not a question. I too thank Eric for that nice description of what's happening. This is not new. This has been going on for years and years in Ithaca. I'm for affordable housing. I think everyone here is for affordable housing. I have not seen rents or house prices dropping or growing more slowly, and they may be, but I have not seen that as a result of all of these tax abatements that have gone on over the last 40 years I've lived here. And I think it needs to be looked at more carefully, particularly with an eye toward what the school district, our school district mostly, vast majority is our school district that has these funds, that does not get these funds. And that is why 2 years ago, there was a movement toward getting a school district person on the TCIDA.
Which was denied.
Which was, no,
Please.
no, there was less support for it at that time than I suspect there will be now. There's been a change in county legislators, and I've certainly been told that there's a lot more interest in this occurring now. I just, in the interest of disclosure here, will say that I intend to go to the public hearing on the 29th and speak as a citizen and taxpayer against this proposal because of its effect on the school district. But I certainly won't be speaking on behalf of the board.
I want to add, you can never do a affordable housing project without a tax bill. It's not possible. And with these affordable housing projects, they fix the rate. So a big chunk of it would be people that make 30% of the area median income, right? Forever, they can afford to live there because maybe they're paying $300 a month rent. Right? It's like we need these programs for people to have housing. Like you have to have them. There's a guideline of, hey, this is what works, this is what's historically worked. They adjust it every year. And these are saying we don't agree with that. We're going to come up with something that's even more beneficial to us.
How common is that?
I've never heard of it, but I'm also like, I've only been in the affordable world for a couple of years, right? But there's a reason there's a guideline, right? And if we have a project and we can't meet the financial obligations, HCR will deny our application. We can submit it, it will get denied. And we'll have to figure out how do we change the building a little bit? How do we change the siding to save $1 million here? How do we make it financially viable to meet the guidelines? And I've never heard of the city in the history of the city of Ithaca changing the affordable guidelines for a specific developer. Never heard of that. So.
And is the board open to hearing from Catherine and you?
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that in speaking to the whether or not it passed through like the change in the legislature. So after the first round of the Southburst conversation in 2024, there was conversation amongst the legislature. Years ago, there had been a number of designated seats on the IDA that over time had been dissolved. And as a result of this 2024 conversation around Southworks, but around other projects as well, the legislators looked into how do we revamp some of those seats that have fallen off in the past. They passed a resolution amongst themselves to bring back a school district seat as well as one other seat. I can't remember exactly what that one was for, but basically to expand the IDA from 7 members to 9 members. And that particular resolution, in order to pass, requires a home rule ruling by the state legislature. So the state legislature has to say to the county legislature that they have the authority to make this change. That resolution has passed both houses. The home rule resolution has passed both houses in Albany. It is on the governor's desk. If the governor signs it before January, the end of January, maybe it's the 1st of January, it will go through and then new seats will be added. Pertinent to us is that the conversation in that resolution was some legislators said that the Ithaca City School District should have a seat, and other county legislators from other counties that were not Ithaca said, no, it should be a school district seat that all of the school that's like elected from the body of the entirety of the schools. But essentially that has not failed. It is sitting on the governor's desk, whether or not the governor signs it is up in the air. Pushing the governor to sign things like that does often help the governor make those decisions, and I'm not sure that there would be anybody but the people in this room and listening on this call who would actually reach out to the governor on this one. But I have seen in like my work of legislative advocacy that once it gets to the governor's desk, sometimes the governor does need a push to move it forward.
And that is, just so I understand, that's. So we're sort of talking about two things, we're talking about a long-term solution, which would be what's on the governor's desk. Must be a very tall set. Versus what's happening on the 29th.
And we have till the 28th if we want to submit some written comments.
You know, another thing I'm curious about is that popped into my head is a lever that you have to pull financially is like the developer. You don't make money as a developer owning and operating these buildings. You don't really technically own them. So like you make money as a developer fee. So like, hey, you guys take the risk, you put up all the cash up front, you manage the construction, you do it's a lot of work, and you get a fee for it. And if there's a delta, like if there's a shortfall in the budget, you say, hey, if we're gonna get I think Casino got $6 million developer fee on the conference center. It doesn't matter. Let's call it $6 million. And there's a $1 million shortfall. You say, you know what, we're not going to take 6 million, we're going to take 5 million. We're still going to make good money, but we're going to help take that developer fee and now allocate that towards whatever we need to do to make the budget whole. If they haven't done that, and then they're already asking for this like extra tax payment, like that's just, and they should be doing the project. And that's why you have these guidelines, because if this was the one and only affordable housing project we could ever do in Ithaca, I'd say, guys, we got to do it. But there's plenty of stuff in Ithaca that's going to be, we're applying for one, we know NHA's applying for one, like there's other sites that can get developed that don't have such a burden. So it's like, if you need affordable housing, and that's why HR, they have these guidelines, because like they have a limited pool points. Like we want to maximize each dollar to build as much housing as humanly possible. We want to have good sites. We want the developers to do a lot of due diligence. We want these things to be well vetted. They want to be well designed, because that's why it's like a free-for-all, right? So if these guys can't do it under the normal guidelines, they shouldn't be doing it. They shouldn't be doing it.
How
So-
much more money would we get if it were the standard, not declaring their own NOI?
We couldn't figure this out right now. Like, but it'd be a lot more. I mean, it could be $1 million or $2 million more a year. And the other thing is, we don't have to support it, and HCR cannot make Ithaca give someone a tax payment. Right? It's kind of like, hey, we're all agreeing to kind of pretty much follow the guidelines. But yeah, these guys were like, hey, Ithaca said we could pay zero tax for 50 years. Each year, be like, wow, that's great. We want, our job is affordable housing. You've made it easier for us to make your project get approved. We're going to approve it. So there's two different bodies that we need to take into consideration. And yeah, if they can't do it the same way INHS has been doing it for 30 years, then they shouldn't be doing it in Ithaca. So not even from Ithaca, right?
Other background, Sarah, that might be helpful to you is the project has proposed in total around 902,000 units. This is the first 200. This is not the first time this is going to come to us.
Yeah.
If they follow their plan.
Yeah.
We're looking at upwards of another 800 units.
Mhm.
So this is a precedent-setting thing, because
Yeah.
if these guys get 30 years, basically no taxes,
Mhm.
then you can count on all other 800 units.
Yeah.
At least the ones that are affordable. I'm sure there's some market rate ones as well.
We're setting
Right,
a precedent for the development, which is not a good precedent to set.
So the recommend on the last page of the memorandum, the recommended information request, if we either what you are proposing or what the
Very basic level. A lot of what Todd just brought up is not part of that. So I would also have the actual cost impact on the district long term, what that looks like. So they're asking for NOI. I'll be pragmatic and just say NOI may be zero.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
They will make it zero.
Exactly where I'm going with this. And
Yeah.
I need to be impartial here, but just so
Yeah.
you understand, that's why I'm not saying much. But one of my asks would be a long-term study in terms of the cost to the district, and that the bare minimum that we should anticipate in taxes from this project is enough to cover the cost in
Yes.
those anticipated years moving forward. So I would give that some thought and look at what that expense is gonna be down the road.
And so when you say that's what we should ask,
Yes.
like, are you recommending that like when we write up something for the public comments that we are like that we're saying, hey,
Yes.
this is what you all should be considering?
Todd, that's always right. I mean, I would anticipate X number of students for this many years as a result of this project. aside from NOI is very, is, to me, is great, set that aside for your thoughts, but for the school district, at the very least, we should anticipate X number of dollars to cover our costs.
Yeah, we can't even forecast for a NOI that can change. It's like, no, there needs to be a hard number from the start. And we need to know what it's gonna be over the next 30 years.
When you say do a study, who's doing the study?
Well, I mean, at a very basic level, Todd gave you some really concrete answers that are legit. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Okay,
So
so not a study, just talk to consultant.
I wouldn't spend more money on something.
Okay,
Okay.
Common sense figures are probably
Okay.
good enough here
Okay.
to adopt.
So, yeah,
You know, I guess how to respond, maybe I could say how maybe we don't wanna respond. I just don't think it's on us. With for or against or like the project or don't like the project, I just think that's not
that's not relevant.
relevant to us. So I would think, I think all we wanna do is present the numbers, how this affects the district financially, and then it's on IDA to weigh all the other things. I mean, but I think, one of our 3 duties is to ensure the fiscal health of the district. I think we just put forth how this is gonna affect our fiscal health, and then it's on IDA.
When does IDA make the decision?
If they have,
It's on the sheet there. I think there's I think it is. I know the town hall meetings out the
28.
well, that's when we have to submit.
right.
I'm wondering if there's like layers of defense here, like layer 1, you write the letter. Layer 2, if you don't get the response, you publish an editorial, like, there's things to do to kind of enlist the public's riling of this,
I mean, the big thing is,
if we have time.
we've been struggling to figure out how to give teachers raises, how to pay teachers.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden we have to now find another $3 million, $4 million a year, where are we gonna find that money? Like that's not feasible. So I don't know if it's something where like the ITA could get on board in terms of like finding, again, like, we just want to cover our costs. Like we have to have affordable housing. I want that to be competitive with other stuff, right? Like I want them to do a project because you might be able to do 2 projects with the same budget if INHS is doing it, right? And instead of like, so so I'm kind of like jumping all over the place. I would love to have the ITA support because I think teachers are going to be really impacted by it.
If I can add, so one of the alternatives you might want to, since they're essentially blowing the rules out of the water.
Yeah.
Based on what you said, so maybe it's based on our water every year. I guess my point is if you give them options, you give them potential answers to this issue, at least you're putting something on the table. So what is the student count per year that's coming from there? What's the total cost of the students? And they pay that per year on top of NOI, because NOI is easier to.
Yeah, it should never be tied to NOI. I mean, that's why they have model that is. It's like, it's based on assessment. An assessment is like, they have that pretty much determined from the get-go, right? So it should be the same rules that everyone else follows. That's one thing. And then 2 is like, based on those same rules, whether it's this project or any project, like we don't want to be massively negatively impacted by a shortfall. So, and it sounds like this is exponentially different than a normal affordable housing project. So
You would stated, that like we wouldn't take a stand on it one way or another. Maybe just help me understand why.
what I mean to say is,
Yeah.
I don't think it's on us to take a stand that's, this is a good project or a bad project.
project.
I'm not in the affordable housing business, I don't have training, I don't, I don't wanna be seen for or against, I just, that's not my job. My job is the fiscal health of the district, and I think what we can do is objectively point to the financial implications this project would have on the district's health.
I was gonna say, yeah, because my mind goes to like, project aside, the current proposal for tax abatements would very negatively.
Well, yes.
impact it. Okay,
So we take a stand on the
I just wanted to-
the abatement, but
I understand.
it's not, I don't think we're for or against the project, I just think
Right.
that's our job.
Yeah,
Catherine.
Catherine?
I have spoken in the past to the IDA on this topic, focused really, 3 minutes, you can only get so much accomplished in 3 minutes, and for us, it's really speaking to the impact of if this development goes through and all of these kids start coming to our schools that we haven't had any financial help in preparing for, like what that does to students and teachers. I plan on revamping a statement and reminding them that this is not the first time they've heard this from me and it continues to be concerns. But 3 minutes is a limited amount of time. I am not planning or prepared to speak to the numbers, the question like that, everything that you are talking about all sounds like the right things for your body to be sharing, and we plan to represent as well in support.
So we won't make any kind of a joint statement, but we will present.
I think it
perhaps
would be,
our
I think it would be a waste of the opportunity to speak, to make
Yeah.
a joint statement, because then it's 1 3-minute statement as opposed to 2 3-minute statements, and anyone who's watching this call also, this is a public hearing, so anyone could speak to this as well and pick up some of the talking points as well.
And with that, like, we could all come and speak as individuals for a few minutes. So like there's a way to do it where you get all the information out there. To your point, like, we shouldn't be doing it together, we should separate and figure out
En
what,
masse.
exactly, so,
The numbers can all go into written statement.
Yeah.
It's actually better to send it to them a few days in advance.
Yes.
I would encourage board members who weren't here at the time to go back 2 years ago to the finance committee when we had the head of the IDA come. And we were discussing this very project, although it wasn't, at that point was not yet a specific building. That gentleman is no longer with the IDA, as best I understand. But his position and the position of the current chair may be different, was that they don't do these things. So all the things that we're asking for here, they don't do.
Okay.
But again, go watch for yourself. But I asked for pretty much all of these things and he said, we don't do that.
Wait, we don't do this, or we don't do the memo?
Like, we don't do analysis of how this will affect the school district.
Oh, we don't
Yeah.
do
That was just his, as an individual, his response. We don't do that.
And his other response very clearly.
You were there, right?
Was that you didn't particularly want a school district representative
Yeah.
on the board because, and he said,
We'll always say.
because we'll always say no to
Yeah.
any tax abatement.
yeah, which is bullshit, like I said, you cannot
Very
do,
typical at the very least.
yeah, but you,
Offensive.
yeah, it is. You cannot do these projects without, you can't do a lot of the market rate projects without some sort of tax abatement. You don't charge enough rent, construction costs to it, like, it's not possible, so we need to find a balance, right? So I would support any viable project as long as it's not having a massive burden on the school district, you know, like, and this is gonna have a massive burden. So I would support it, but they need to have it financially responsible, it's not.
But we won't, our statement won't be a supportive
Right.
project. Our
Right.
statement will be concerned about the implication
Yeah.
of the tax.
Yeah, I don't support the project,
Right.
I support affordable housing, but I don't support this financial model.
So I hear that we're gonna write a letter.
Yeah.
And the logistics of that, we'll talk about in a second. But my question remains, like, is there time, if it looks like they're gonna pass, to go to the next level, which is like blow it up more publicly, or do we need to put like a publication in the Ithaca something? So that the public hears about this and more people go speak out about it?
Yeah,
We need blow up metaphor.
I meant.
Yes.
I meant.
I know, I support that, I think the more voices, the more they're gonna listen, that's been
Okay.
my experience, and
We are in the business of public education.
yeah.
So perhaps we publish the letter also
Send it
in a newspaper.
And yes,
We can send it in as a letter to
Yeah.
the editor. or
Yeah.
something.
And how does a letter like this get written typically from a board? Just like,
Somebody will draft the letter.
Yeah.
Then send it to the board, we could all look at it and review it, and then we can.
Do we have an answer as to when they would be making a decision? I know someone said it was in here, but I don't see it, but I don't know.
it's some period of time after the public hearing. I
Yeah,
know that it
yeah,
took several weeks the last time around,
yeah, and
if not months.
yeah, I forget what their process is. It
well,
might
because
be-
construction's projected to begin November 2026, so sometime before then.
In July 28th, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be potentially like the next meeting, you know, so it could be a month later, if like no one came out and spoke against it, if the IDA supported it, like, we can usually kind of fast track things, if not. It, you know, it could be a few months and it gets denied and come back, so it's,
So what are our thoughts on what Sarah said around us writing?
yeah, 100%.
Okay, with that, Garrick, is that something that you would wanna write, or Todd, or?
I can write a draft.
Yeah, I could happily, like, you know,
I
add
on
some,
that, yeah.
go with that.
Could you guys do it in a Google Doc and then just we can
Oh, that's a good, okay.
add
Great.
comments?
And I think it's next Thursday, so maybe trying to have something for them on Monday.
Yeah.
Give them 4 days to.
And is the idea that we would send that vote to like the Times, the Voice, and to the IDA? Cause that's we have
I
that.
think, yeah.
Our old president has something to say.
Madam Chairwoman.
Former
Madam
former president.
Former Madam Chairwoman.
If your intent is to have this letter be signed from the Board of Education of the city school district, then it needs to be approved by the board as a whole in advance. Otherwise, you would just need to sign them as individual people. You wouldn't be able to put the stamp up, this is from the Board of Education, unless it has been approved by a majority of the board publicly.
Could all 9 of us sign it?
You could, but you couldn't in your capacity as a board.
You just have to say member of the board.
I don't even think.
Not even that?
Yeah, you would have
Okay.
to be acting as an individual citizen. Because the board, without taking it the wrong way, none of you have any authority
Right.
over school district functions except as a whole governing
Yeah.
body.
So
It is,
Could we
can
vote
you pre-vote?
to send a letter that summarizes what we said and vote on that?
Yeah, you could approve a resolution saying that you're going to write a letter
So we could
to
do
be
that.
signed by the whole board without having as long as it's just a letter and not like a resolution, which is what we did the last time. We went to, they were discussing Southworks, the board passed a resolution and then sent that as the comment.
What's the difference? This is just procedural, I guess, like what's I remember last year there was. I don't know, I wanna say we wrote something to the Voice about something they were gonna publish about Cuba Heights.
yeah, that's
Very different, okay.
I don't,
Good to
well,
know.
we also have the option, I mean, we don't have to, we also do have an option of, we could have a 5-minute special meeting, come in, raise our hands and then have it sent out.
Well, we have a form.
But we could just.
Yeah, we have a quorum, we should do it now.
I'd be comfortable passing a resolution on, yet to be drafted, and I think as president, Adam would have the final sign off on that. I think is that, if there's disagreement, I think you would be
Sure.
the board president would
Yeah, I just support doing
say fine to me.
make the motion.
Alright, I can do that. We'll all have a chance to work on it. Obviously, it'll be in a Google Doc or.
Can I also suggest that the I don't know if this is legal, so correct me, but can ICSD in their communications put this letter out to the public as well? Like on Facebook and in a newsletter to families before this meeting happens?
Dom and Bob, what are your thoughts?
We were just talking about that.
I would think it's public information or anything you do. So the letter could be publicized.
No, I'm saying, how do we get that done? That's my question, like.
Like
Postal
tap or, like-
communications are watching, they're listening to you. They're logged on and
They're
listening.
always.
Okay,
So we asked.
we asked that, I just feel like we should use all the outlets we have so that noise is loud on the 28th, so that they know that this is really
Important.
important.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, this is very wonky. I
Yeah,
mean, and so that's part of the danger of this. Well, I mean,
yeah,
you gotta really, 12% NOI,
No,
what does that
that's-
mean?
that's
I mean,
not
the average, it's too much to ask the average person at home to be following these websites and downloading these applications and typing in what does NOI mean, and so.
But what they do understand is whatever, this project doesn't pay other property
Yeah.
owners in Ithaca will be.
Yes,
right, right.
the expense doesn't go away,
Right.
I think that's.
Yeah.
It's just born elsewhere.
So can you verbalize
Yeah.
I move to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Authorize the
I
board
was just trying to.
to draft a letter stating blah blah.
Adam, I'm gonna.
Well, I only wrote half. I just started scribbling.
You are doing great, Emily.
That's what I'm like.
I move to approve the drafting of a letter, I guess, regarding the implications of the proposed.
We're calling upon the IDA to,
Wait, can't Adam not make a motion?
Yeah, I was just writing, I don't make the motion.
we just,
So I make a motion to draft a letter to the IDA describing how the tax abatement in affects
But
our,
we need
affects.
them to consider the effects of the proposed
just-
tax abatement for South Works.
Let's,
Give me a moment, I'm
yeah.
gonna put up
If-
a
yeah,
Word
that's a good idea.
document on here so we can all workshop it together.
Emily.
Fantastic.
I mean, we can keep it pretty
We should
simple.
get-
Very
We don't have to.
Make sure.
No, we just,
Letter,
no,
it's just like the
we just have to have the
implications
right-
I'm just gonna write a letter.
of project owns.
We're not gonna write the whole letter, but
move to approve the drafting of the letter regarding the implications of the proposed.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Tax
Tax
abatement
Keep it broad,
Yes.
vague.
for the. What's the name of the department?
Beacon Communities LLC.
What is it?
just call it South
Beacon
Works.
Communities. Or it's the name of the applicant.
Yes.
At Beacon Communities LLC.
Southworks Affordable LLC.
On the long-term financial health of the district.
I was, so what about, I will put, I'll give Emily a chance to write it up. I just scribbled very quickly. I move to approve the drafting of a letter regarding the implications of the proposed tax abatements on the Ithaca City School District. For the Beacon Communities LLC project.
I would only add, I would move to draft a letter from the Board of Ithaca City School Board of Education. Oh, there we
What I
go.
put up there, that's what I wrote.
That's it.
To say like the implications
That
of
the
this
Board of
project.
Education.
That's what I wrote, that's not what you guys said.
Prepare and submit an official statement in the form of a letter to Tompkins County Industrial Development outlining the anticipated, very good.
I like that.
So that's not what you said, that's what I wrote while you were talking before, before you started talking.
What I wrote is
It's not
totally
attached.
irrelevant. I was just playing around, this is more serious. Okay, so move that the Board of Education, the ICSD, prepare and submit an official statement in the form of a letter to the Tompkins County IDA outlining the anticipated financial implications to the district of the proposed tax abatement. Beacon Communities LLC, better than what I wrote. Anybody wanna, we're workshopping, so does anybody wanna change
Do
anything?
you wanna make it more general and just say outlining the implications?
No, I think keep it vague.
Well, that's what I mean.
Well, it says-
So get rid of anticipated financial.
What's wrong with it?
Isn't that?
I don't
That's
know.
what we want.
No,
Yeah, okay,
that's-
okay.
We might wanna add a summary of something like, the board is very concerned about the negative impacts of this tax proposed.
I think that might be more appropriate to the
Yeah,
letter
yeah, that's the
itself
letter.
versus
Yeah,
the
that's the letter.
resolution.
Yeah, this is just saying we could post
Yes.
or bring it without having to come back to the board.
And this doesn't prevent us from including
Yeah.
local media on it or having the communications department share that.
Once we have it, the letter, then we can choose.
It's public.
to send it.
I just wanted to, yeah.
It's spoilable once we write it.
Okay, who wants to move it?
Okay,
I move that the Board of Education of the Ithaca City School District prepare and submit an official statement in the form of a letter to the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency outlining the anticipated financial implications to the district of the proposed tax abatement for Beacon Communities LLC.
Second.
so moved by Jacob, seconded by Emily. Any additional discussion?
Friendly amendment, we might say parentheses, Southworks project. Just because that
Yes.
will make it really
Yes.
clear to anyone reading it, so
Yes.
that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Thank you for the friendly amendment.
I'm very friendly.
Do we wanna put the word public before statement?
Say that again?
Do we wanna put the word public before statement, official public statement?
Because you're a public body, it's
Yeah.
implied,
Okay,
because every official, like, every official movement action of the board is a public.
I would like no more friendly amendments, please.
But if it's the will of the board, we can put it.
okay.
Any additional comments, discussion, friendly amendments, unfriendly amendments? Hostile?
Did someone second?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was moved by Jacob, it was seconded by Emily. I can call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimous.
Great.
Nice one.
Thanks, guys.
All right, good work.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing this forward.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karen.
That would have been a big miss.
Okay, and that moves us on to our second and final item of tonight's or today's agenda. Item 2.2, bell-to-bell cell phone ban. And we'll have a discussion, but I can well, I don't know if you wanna move a resolution or we can have a discussion first.
I'll do the resolution, like with all, to direct the superintendent to implement a bell-to-bell personal electronics policy for the 2026-2027 school year.
Second.
Okay, so that's moved by Jacob, seconded by Todd, and we can now have some discussion.
Is this resolution available online for people or the agenda?
Yes.
Great, on board,
Yeah.
public can
Mhm.
access it. Okay.
Does it matter? Sorry.
I was gonna, can we project it as well? That would be helpful. Then.
What was your
You want it
question?
in an editable format?
Does it matter that
is?
this already exists?
No,
I heard that.
I mean, it doesn't matter, because that's what we're. I think this is.
No, I mean, like, right now, like, what this is calling for is a different storage system. But there already is a district-wide belt personal electronic device policy, that's what the law required. And so we're saying that
We're
we're
going to
going to
amend
do
it?
that after it's already,
Mhm.
we already have that in place.
Yeah, that's good, because we wanna, it's a resolution to
Revise.
to amend the current policy, not a resolution to create a policy instead of this one. Well, we can withdraw, we should, maybe we should just withdraw, if you wanna withdraw your movement.
I withdraw.
And we could change the language and then we could have the discussion, because we're not actually doing the thing that you.
So I make a motion to direct the superintendent to
Amend the current.
Revised.
to
Revise.
and. But the superintendent doesn't amend policy, we amend policy.
Revise. You can
The
revise.
superintendent does not revise policy.
To implement a revised.
So we are directing the superintendent to implement specific revisions to the personal electronic device policy for the 2026-27 school year.
So.
That's a crucial point though, like, is the board? Are board members interested in revising the board policy or in adjusting?
Yeah.
Do you know,
I do, yes, I mean
because if it's the
personally,
board policy, you're right, like, we're not asking the superintendent to do anything,
yeah,
the board is, you know what I'm saying?
I do, so the way I personally. The language in this that specifically interests me is I think more about creating guardrails and certain directives for the superintendent in the implementation of the policy. And so I would just call out the specific things that I think are not contrary to policy, but would be things that to date have not happened in my understanding and that I would like to see happen. One is that number one, that devices be secured and inaccessible. That is a directive to the superintendent. That's not a shift in policy, I don't believe. And the same, number two is redundant because it's already in our policy. Number three is, I think, a directive as well, at least in my.
So it's to implement the current policy with fidelity.
Well, but that, I think it would be to,
Sorry.
no, you're fine.
Oh, the current policy.
The current
Yeah, I
policy.
think it's.
Yeah, I think for me, I agree with everything that is stated in the first half of your resolution, Todd, but I think that what were like the main differences, and I think this is where, at least in the last year, I did not see a single instance where we as a board did this, but I know it is within our purview to do as a board, which is to say, hey, like to our superintendent, we want something very specific to happen in implementation, because generally, while it is of course the superintendent's work to implement policy, when we want something specific to happen in the implementation of said policy, it is our prerogative to do so. And so I'm particularly interested in number one and number two. But I'm not sure for other people's thoughts.
Well, so it might be an ask to include within the bell-to-bell policy some modifications.
Or is it the plan?
I think it's implementing it with fidelity. That's why I just want to remember what language we used about storage. If we were general on this, or said like there are multiple options, or at least one.
So
Okay, so storage options will include but are not limited to the following. So what we're really saying, so we either need to, so we have a couple of options. One is that we would actually want to change the policy here to say that the only option
Yes.
is full remove, whatever. And that would be a policy change that we would not need to be directing the superintendent to do. Or we could leave that and say that we are asking it to be implemented with fidelity, which means that the outcomes that we're looking for would be different.
I mean,
So I think the first question is, are we talking about a policy change or are we talking about directing the implementation of the policy? And we have to decide that as a first step before moving the conversation forward. And this was your resolution. So I feel like you could
Yeah, I mean.
bring forward your first ask, and then we could talk from there.
Whether it's in resolution or amending it, I'm indifferent, doesn't matter. I just wanna make sure, one of the thing I care about is that kids don't have access to their phones during the day. Which technically they're not supposed to. There's a New York State mandate that says kids can have access to phones. And they gave us a couple of options at a minimum. One is they put them in the pouches, they can't take them out of the pouches during the day. They just take them out of the pouches, so that doesn't work. The other is they can put them in their lockers. How do we know if they put them in their lockers? We're never gonna know about it. We're gonna be in the exact same position. So the state mandate, we're not meeting the state mandate. Because it's failing, right? So what I'm saying is we need to take the phones away. I think they should be in electronic lockers that each kid gets their own individual locker. They come in sets of like 36. So there's 36 in like a little locker system. Each kid gets their own unique code. The trap when it gets put in, the trap when it gets taken out. So like it kind of monitors itself. You don't need to be policing it. It kind of does it on its own. If your locker is in K building, there's cell phone lockers in K building. So you have to go to your locker, it's convenient. So you strategically place these things throughout the building where kids have to go anyway. It's the best system that I've seen. So I don't know if like we should be the ones to say, hey, this is the system, or say like, hey, you need to have a system that requires kids they need to put in their phones, they get locked up, they cannot access them until end of day, or they get, permission or something from the school. So how we do that, I don't know. I'm not a policy guy. Like that's, I thought this was the best way because I didn't know any better. I consulted with Kate. She didn't have more contacts, so she said, yeah, this is perfect. So like I don't know how to get it there. I just know what I want done at the end of the day. So
Understand how people are set up.
because she didn't look at the original one. So I think she looked at this and she's like, well, this is how you do, this is what we can accomplish, what we want to accomplish. I don't know if it's the best way. So that piece is that my wheelhouse. I just know what I want results.
Personally, I think for the first question, I think what we were talking about is an amendment to policy.
Okay.
Which is that our policy, rather than reading one of the following, that it involves students physically not having the device on their person.
Yeah. Or being able to access it whenever they want.
That in my mind is, I think what you were saying.
Do we need to make this decision before we discuss?
No,
Because-
I was gonna say that, I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I think I knew you were gonna say something, I can't agree. Let's have a discussion about this, and then maybe at the end of the discussion, we can decide the next step. And if we do decide to modify the policy, there's also a process to modifying the policy, which would not happen at this
Yeah.
meeting, because it does take some time.
Several times.
We have to have first reading, second reading, that's our.
We don't.
Can you skip those? If
You
there's a-
can skip those, that's what
six?
Kate said, yeah,
Oh, okay.
I believe that's correct. Right?
yes.
What is the
it is.
majority going to be approved at first reading?
A super majority is 6 votes.
Correct.
Yeah, I would double check with Kate. I know she said doing the first reading or second. Yeah,
Okay.
especially because it's time sensitive anyway, like we need to give the district time to implement this. But I'm not Kate, so go consult with her, just make sure I'm not misrepresenting in some way unintentionally.
Okay, well, why don't we just discuss
discuss,
first, let's
yeah.
discuss first and discuss what all the implications would be of that, and I'll let Jill go first, she just raised her hand. I'll go from there, and then Emily's next, yes.
I'll say what I have to say, first noting that through no fault of my own, I haven't been present during any reports on how this system went, current
Neither
system
have
went.
we.
And so I don't know what the data is, I don't know how teachers are feeling. Despite that, I have an opinion,
Yeah,
and I'd like to share some information from the New York State Teachers Association. If you pass that around. because I think this serves as an interesting model. I'm in the position of agreeing with Todd's overall objective without agreeing with this particular resolution for several reasons. One is I think it's a bit premature. And two, I don't think it goes quite far enough in that we're talking largely about cell phones here, while we're giving every student in the district their own personal notebook or computer, where they could certainly access the same sorts of things that we don't wish them to be accessing. The other main point I'd like to make, and the reason I brought this to your attention, if you haven't seen it, I don't know how many of you get this, I get it, but
Yeah, that's,
okay. And what this does is it differentiates among students' developmental levels and ages. I think we probably have very different issues, pre-K, early elementary, later elementary, middle school, and high school regarding the implementation of any sort of technology. And I think what we do should reflect that. And I think, other people are doing it. I think NICEA has some good ideas, and I think I personally need to hear more from teachers before I will be voting on this resolution or went very close to it. So I'll be abstaining on this is what I'll be saying at this point in time, despite my almost complete agreement with Todd's goals.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the devices and the cell phone, like, they're intertwined, but I think they do need to be addressed differently. Like, someone came in and spoke, I think the last one meeting saying that the largest school district in California, LA has now banned all electronics up to the second grade because they're like, kids should not have any devices in the schools, period. Right, but but it's almost like it's a separate issue that needs to be attacked differently. And I spoke to Sarah, she wants to move something forward that's very similar. So I think you will be seeing some of these other things addressed in the very near term. But I think it's important to kind of just focus on the cell phones. We had 2 teachers come and speak. There was 24 hours notice, right? 2 teachers came and spoke, and they were like, "This is not working. We don't know what to do." It comes down to a policing issue. We let kids have phones. Teachers are not teaching; they're policing. And every time they have to stop and tell a kid, "Hey, can you please put that away?" Everyone is affected in the room, right? And to me, I don't need the data. I got, if 2 teachers are coming in, that's too many. There should be 0 teachers. They should not be worried about cell phones. They should be worried about connecting with students and teaching students.
I'm just gonna pause for a second, though, just because Emily was gonna go next, and then you can respond,
No.
and everybody will get to say everything they want to say. That's why I'm
Last
next.
up.
Thank you, Todd.
No, please speak. I'm sure you know what I was gonna say.
I know. I usually let you speak and then I just say what you said and make it like it was my own. So I need you to speak first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would love to have cell phones removed from students throughout the school day. Like, clear as day, that's what I think needs to happen as well. I would love to see that happen. I also think that much of what you just said in your opening remarks is completely inaccurate and not reflective of what actually happens in schools when these cell phone policies get implemented. And we're seeing, like, we have so much research and reporting from school districts from all across the country and within New York State that are making that exact argument. That you seem to be making the argument that if kids lock these cell phones into lockers, that suddenly we're gonna have phone-free school. Well, you just said, like, that'll eliminate the policing for teachers to be doing that. But what we actually are seeing across so many districts is that kids are putting a burner phone in there, they're bringing another phone in their pockets. It's like there are so many other ways that these very brilliant young minds are sneaking electronic devices into schools.
Agreed.
And so it will, I have no doubt that it will limit it. And I'm not arguing that that's not a great idea anyway, it might be. But I think that we need to be, like, very careful with our wording and thinking really realistically about what will actually happen with these policies, because teachers will still be dealing with this same exact stuff. They will still now be seeing kids sneaking around even more because they were supposed to have them somewhere else. we also have exceptions that would allow for quite a number of students. And again, I would love to actually see this data from everything from like, you know, needing to take medications to like having kind of anxiety related mental health issues, that there are a lot of things that are allowing students to both actually be allowed to not participate in the policy, or that students have proven have been able to circumvent any policy and any way of storing phones. And so it's not even the debate for me of like whether it should be in lockers or whether it should be, you know, in pouches or whatever, though I will say that if people had actually participated and been more present for the year-long debate where we were talking about this in policy, where I saw very, very few of my board colleagues ever there participating in those conversations with us, there are actually a number of unintended consequences that we at least need to talk about and recognize when lockers are being used and when students are turning over, you know, $500 devices. You know, schools are finding that they've like, you know, the liability goes way up, that they're having to pay families for scratch phones, for lost phones, for like all of these different things happening. It requires more front desk staff and other people to be managing that, locking it, unlocking it. Students do sometimes, like they are allowed to use their phones throughout the day. They have to have a means with which to use a phone, so that coming, this is just reporting from like other districts who have done this. So that's one piece. And then the other piece is, it makes me a little nervous for us to, or not even nervous, it concerns me that we are talking about this from like one perspective, just talking about where the cell phones are gonna go, when we can simultaneously say, we have no idea, to Jill's point, we have no idea how the current policy is even working. We heard from 2 teachers, I've heard from many more saying the same thing. And I've heard from teachers that are like, my classroom is like way better, and I can't believe the incredible impact. And Catherine is shaking her head, but like her reporting out at that last meeting as well was also like very mixed. So even though she was sitting next to those 2 teachers who I like just feel so heavily for, that's not the whole story. And I'm very angry about the fact that we weren't given the opportunity to get the data and information that we asked for countless times last year. But the reality at this point is we don't have that information. We don't know actually how effective this policy is. And we're at a place now where we're about to go into the next school year. And the fact that we're only talking about like putting a Band-Aid on one thing, which is where the phone is actually going to be kept, without ever mentioning like requiring, I mean, talk about like asking the superintendent to do something, like asking the superintendent to actually like provide us with the data that we want, including like the ITA and our student advisory groups and our student reps to actually like on a regular basis collect this information for us. And then also like, there are no discussions about like the accountability of school administrators, who are the ones who are really supposed to be implementing this policy, though, so that I share your concern about it having such a negative impact on teachers in the classroom. Where is the ask for like our executive team to hold school leaders far more accountable, so that regardless of where the cell phones are, if they were actually being implemented, if this was being implemented in a way where the second somebody sees a cell phone, it's taken away from them and taken to the office, then maybe we could avoid having the unintended consequences and the financial strain of buying all of these new things, and maybe solving the same problem. Like it just seems so like narrow.
Yeah, I actually agree with pretty much everything you're saying. We are not gonna, this is not it's gonna solve the problem, right? But it's gonna improve. We came in last year, we're all like, these policies aren't gonna work, but it's what we got, so let's reevaluate. This is the best we got for right now. We're gonna reevaluate next year. That was not working. What I'm saying is put this in now, and we will still have to address issues. There might be issues that come up 2 years down the road, and in that 2 years, we're like, hey, here's this new thing that we need to address, but like get something in better today. Because we could spend 5 years getting all the data from California here and here, like talking to every single person and be the same place of like, well, this would have been better. Like, I hear you, but like, I don't want to do nothing because we don't have all the information. I don't want to do nothing because we don't have the best solution. This is a better solution, and we can continue to add. 6 months from now, we'll be like, guys, you know what? let's do this to tweak it and improve it. Like, I want to make progress instead of just having data overload and, you know, being indecisive and just waiting for like, well, we didn't talk to the teacher association. We need 50% of the teacher association. We need that. Like, to me, this is a much better solution. There's gonna be problems, but like, it's not putting a Band-Aid over it. It's like, the biggest issue from what I'm seeing, I could be wrong, is that kids have access to cell phones. Yeah, there's gonna be a percentage burn, kids getting burnt phones. Does it go from 20 kids using their phone, 20% of kids using their phone to 3%? That's an improvement. We're still gonna have to do it. My daughter's in 6th grade. She uses her phone during school.
Can I ask you one follow-up question? You said these
And
lockers, I know, I promise. These lockers are like the best option you've seen, like from where? Like, have there been studies on that or are there?
I've just been reading and like, if you read like, what's the like, there's ones where like, you go to the main office and you sign them in with a piece of paper and there's a key that goes in.
I'm
There's
just
no.
like, what are you, like, are you talking about research on like how the lockers work?
So there's different types of lockers, right? There's the cheapest locker you can get that has an actual key that someone in the office will have
So
to
you're
manage.
researching the
Wait,
lockers themselves.
yes, the lockers,
not how it works.
and how the lockers work.
Right,
And,
but
like,
how it's input, like how it actually works.
yes, yeah, and so what,
Impact is what it
yes,
is.
and what I'm saying, there's digital lockers, they're more expensive, they come in like sets of 36. You can have if you're locked, this is my personal opinion, your lockers in K building, the cell phone lockers will be near your locker, so it's easy for kids to access. They're digital, they track what time it goes in, what time it goes out, each kid has its own unique key, code, so they're the only ones that should be able to get access and get in that. If they pull it out, there's a digital record, so it's helping, you know, like automate.
So they can pull it out anytime?
So they could, hold on, you can have it like that, you can have, so they can't get it out anytime, right? But and like, there's gonna be issues, like some parents are gonna freak out about that, but my thing is like, here's a system that works, and then from there, how do we implement that system? What technology do we wanna use, like, we might, maybe wanna have it turn it off where they can access it, maybe where they can't access it, so like.
But how can you not ask those answer those questions before?
I am answering those questions.
But you don't know, but you're saying like we could have
Oh, we
it
can.
open to people, we could not, like, that's a huge.
Emily, what I'm saying is,
But
let's
that's a
come up
whole
with something, we're gonna pivot, no matter what we put in today, we're gonna realize, hey, we can improve on this. We're not gonna sit here and say, hey, let's answer every single question, every hypothetical, and then 3 years from now, put it in the system. Cause we're gonna put it in 3 years and be like, hey, we never thought about this, here's some new way for kids to access things, like, this to me is gonna be better than what we have right now.
So, okay,
And I don't wanna wait a year to put in a different system, because this one's not working.
I'm just gonna process. So Todd would like to take an immediate action. Emily has a lot of questions about the implications of that immediate action. I'm gonna call on Jacob and then I think, did you want? Oh,
No, I'm listening.
okay,
Yeah.
Jacob. Catherine, okay, so Jacob.
Catherine, why don't you come up?
Yeah, why don't you come on up to the.
Come on, Catherine.
Come on, alright, so Jacob and then Catherine, we'd love to hear.
One of the conversations that happened about cell phones last year was a parent came and spoke, talked about the addictive nature of devices. The board president at the time talked about like addiction and how we should be cautious about like, you know, like best practices in addiction. And I had a different takeaway than him around it, because I think he was advocating for not having more restrictive measures, whereas in my mind, I think based on what we know about addiction, if we were talking not about phones, but about alcohol, you are less likely to drink alcohol if you don't have it on you. You are more likely to drink alcohol if you have it on you. And so I think, for what it's worth, some key things I disagree with you on, Todd.
Yeah.
Like, I think having been a principal, right, I could bring in 2 staff members to say anything. And they might say something that I agree with or something I disagree with. So I found both of their, testimonies compelling, but largely because it matched what I view as logical and what I personally observe, right? So I just want to say I want to be cautious about over relying on like testimony that happens to align with a point of view. But I can say like I personally observed at the high school like more than 50% of phones like out in the and nothing happening about it. And so everything aligns, right,
Yeah.
with what they said and what the surveys essentially reveal. But I want to agree wholeheartedly with the idea that in the end we have like right now, what is about to happen in the school district without us taking action is that students will continue to have the Velcro pouches that I have no evidence that any student uses.
Yep.
That students will therefore still have And because we don't even have like regular lockers for all of our students, even students who need their device at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, but who want to put it away, might not be able to, like outside of their person. So we are allowing students to have addictive devices on their person, which I think teachers aside, that sucks for kids. I just don't think that's actually fair for kids. Like we are not giving them the opportunity to remove from their person a device which I know some colleagues on the board have sometimes talked about like, well, you know, like parents need to think about whether or not they send their kids to school with devices. I disagree with that general idea because I think in the school we are responsible for what happens in the school, not parents. And I do think that just like the idea of I don't think we should be getting into the weeds of whether like, you know, what specific device makes sense. I think that's very much what we want to do. What I would like to direct the superintendent to do, which I trust that the superintendent and the executive team and the teachers and all the people that they're supposed to get input from could do. Jill, to what you said really quickly, I'm with you 100% on this. I sent actually to our lawyer like language from Los Angeles where my brother lives, of like what, because their school board put forward a very robust resolution, like directing the superintendent to take certain actions around screen time, and I'm curious about the degree to which that's possible in New York, because New York and Los Angeles, like in California, have different sorts of laws, right? I think we might be more restricted, but maybe not. We'll see. But I guess I would urge you not to abstain, because I think like logically we know that if the choice is between remove student devices and give student devices, both of them will have a million problems, but remove student devices should be more effective. And so, and if it is not more effective, then we work on it. Like I don't see any negative personally. I foresee negative consequences of any action or inaction we take. But the positive consequences of directing the superintendent to say, no, we want them removed, has more positive consequences and less negative consequences than continuing something that we know doesn't work.
Thank you.
I'm gonna turn over to Catherine next. And then-
Yeah, so first, I really wanna thank you for acknowledging that we last spring came in on a very, very short turnaround with some anecdotal data that had been gathered. Our teachers do feel that doing nothing would not be helpful, is a trend that we can pull from that data. In the survey that we put to our educators, what we learned is that there is room for improvement across the board, that the primary concern of teachers is not necessarily the policy as it is written, but is really in the implementation between a kid has a phone on their person, a teacher finds that they have the phone on their person. The policy says all we do is give gentle reminders. We give gentle reminders, which may or may not start a power struggle. But the real sticking point for educators and how important and critical this is to you really depends on what school you are in, is after that gentle reminder, then what? And the teachers who came and spoke there, like they were people who submitted to the survey and said they had a lot more that they wanted to say, and I encouraged them to speak there and tell their own stories. And they both came from the same school, and for them it was there's no and then what, and that was really the sticking point for them. So I've also been listening to all of you, well, to those of you who were here last year having this conversation last year, and really in preparation for today's meeting, kind of thinking like, if I were in your positions, what would it take to actually solve this problem? Because I do not feel confident that a fancy digital locker is going to necessarily be better than a pouch. I mean, it's more secure than a pouch. Maybe it'll work, but that alone is not going to solve the problem.
No, it won't.
What I've heard people talk about the role of caregivers. I don't necessarily love the tone of the conversation that some of them have had, but it does open an opportunity to ask the question of what role does the school district play in caregiver education around the long term, like what we're seeing are really like the impacts on students' social, emotional, and physical health. So there is a piece that if I were in a position of crafting policy and saying, you know, the lever that we're going to use here is to revise the policy, caregiver education would help. Additionally, some sort of preventative method. I think that Jacob has a really strong point that even if kids are using the pouches, which we've heard from the student reps that they're not using the pouches, if the only place to put the pouch is in your backpack, you're already not following the policy, right? So like that is a problem with the actual policy because the pouches don't have a place to go. That's not the backpack. So we're not taking them off kids in that way. Our teachers have really struggled with the lack of what happens then with the lack of an implementation plan, which does, you know, when I came and spoke, what we asked of you was that the board exercise the oversight to make sure that the policy is being implemented, which means there needs to be some kind of what happens then. But then also, you will, through all of those layers of prevention and natural and developmentally appropriate consequences for students who are struggling, you will then get down to a much smaller population of students who are struggling with true addiction. And that's where, and devices are not the only thing that some of our students are struggling with addiction to. And where is the district response and responsibility in addressing students and families struggling with addiction is also a piece of it. So like if the resolution, and I haven't seen the whole thing, if the resolution is really just about is it pouches or lockers, it is missing many opportunities for the many, many layers that are needed to actually accomplish Todd's goal, which we share. Kids not having phones on them during the school day would really, really help them learn.
So
I need that one thing, so I agree. No, I because I agree with you. I agree with everything you said, I agree with everything you said. There needs to be a better policy on what happens if there's a cell phone, right? No matter what, that's a piece of it. Will the percentage of kids having cell phones on them be higher, you know, with the lockers or lower with lockers? To me, it's like, okay, if we could drop the percentage of kids having cell phones to 3% versus 100%, that solves 70% of the problem. Versus another 3% that have burner phones, versus another 3% that hack the lockers and come up with some crazy way that I thought. Then from there, that the next layer is what happens to the police when we don't have. So there's all these other things that we need to address, but to me, it's like cut them out down. Like if every kid has a bottle of alcohol in their pocket, right, all day long, we're like, well, we need to figure out how to police better if they sip it in front of us. No, hold on. If we can, I know, but if we can take 97% of the alcohol away from kids and put it in a locker so they never have access to it, then we're dealing with a much smaller percentage. And we're still dealing with the same things, but it's a much smaller percentage. So we do need all those things. I don't think you solve all those things before you take any action. I think you take action on something that to me is, you know, it will make a significant difference. And then from there, we still have to address all those other things regardless.
Sorry, let's let Jacob respond.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I really like piecemeal approaches when there's an overall vision. And I do think the overall vision that it sounds like we're coalescing we are very worried about access to devices and as well as access to whatever is on those devices. Like with the district Chromebooks, I don't necessarily have a concern about students having Chromebooks except in lower grades, but I do have concerns about what I perceive to be, based on my students who have Chromebooks, the lack of restrictions on like what students can do on Chromebooks is a concern of mine. So I just want to highlight what I do think like the big things that I feel uncomfortable thinking about progressive consequences when our only option right now is, hey, students, do a socially unacceptable thing, which is to put your phone in this stupid pouch, keep it in your backpack, and resist temptation for 8 hours. I think that's unreasonable to expect of students. And that is the main reason why I'm supportive, even if it's just one thing that we're addressing and solving, of again, I just think if we were to do it all over, like right now, we actually have a blank slate. $20,000 got spent on the pouches, none of those pouches are coming back, like no one's gonna use them. So it's just like, do we want to not do, like, do we want to do something that is more likely to remove phones or not? And I would prefer to do things that are more likely, because then that will support data gathering and continuous improvement, all things.
I
like
would
that.
love to see evidence that actually showed that making the one change of where the cell phone lives would have a bigger impact than making one change of holding the people who are supposed to be holding students accountable to not using their cell phones and actually holding them accountable and actually having.
Like, why freeze
Yeah,
out
because
either or?
because you just said if there was one thing that we were gonna do,
But
it would
Oh.
be.
No, yeah,
It
so
would-
I believe in both, just to clarify, like, I think, yeah, any system without accountability is pointless. So I believe that, and I believe that accountability is easier and better and more worthwhile when the original system makes the most sense. And so again, I don't have evidence, I just have, I guess, what I would describe as logic, which is students will be much less likely to use cell phones if they don't have cell phones with them.
And again, you have to do what you're saying regardless, you have to do it in either system. But if you're doing it in, a system where kids, the majority of kids don't have actually access to it. It's easier to the policing because the policing have.
Yeah, but you're not changing it, you're just trying to
I'm
fix the
doing
problem.
that.
No, I'm not saying you,
Yeah.
I'm saying if you're just, there is a way, it's just that I'm not arguing for either one, I'm just saying like. In August, right before a school year, if I felt like I could get like the biggest, what I think is like a realistic win. For the first day of school, I would love to see that chart that was made of like. Consequences or whatever.
Who made that chart?
Completely, or it's at their team, completely revamped. And that it was like, we see a cell phone one time and that is taken out of your hands and it is taken to the office. And I'm not saying that that's sufficient at all. But if I'm really thinking about the realistic nature of even the timeline of where we are in the summer, of the logistics of even training everybody on these new systems, having somebody that can fix the blockers when they break, like just the whole thing. If there was one thing that I feel like could have the biggest immediate impact, it would be to actually hold students accountable to not using their phones and having them.
And now we're debating like which one's gonna be the most effective,
Well-
we're never gonna get the information, we should do both, right now I have this proposal that, here's one thing that, we have to fix both things.
How many school districts do you know of that actually are using lockers?
I don't have the data.
But even like anecdotally, how many of you, like
Yeah, I wanna call on.
because you keep saying that it's super effective, but you have no idea.
They've been around for a year.
But like the yonder pouches are locked, those, like, why aren't we talking about those? Like, that's another
So
kind
you
of
wanna,
locked.
you wanna use the other options?
I'm just saying, why aren't we talking, like, we're talking
Okay,
about one thing.
let me just pause, I wanna call on Sarah, I have a thought too that I'd like to share, but I'll go later. Sarah, go ahead.
I have two things to say. One is I think that the expectations that are put forth to kids are important. And telling, to what Jacob said kind of broke my heart, like telling a kid to put something that's very tempting on them is sad situation of affairs to me for a high school kid to be in a classroom. Even if they desperately want to be the kid that follows the rules, like they would be a social outcast to do that. Because then they're not included and who's sitting where at lunch and they're not getting the updates of what's happening after school. And it seems like a very unfair position to put on children. So I do think it's up to the school district. I think it's up to us to put these parameters. I heard you, Emily, and I agree with 100% of what you're saying. I think we all agree with everything that everybody's saying except for the way to do it. But I think I didn't know where I was landing before the meeting, but I'm landing more on the side of get the lockers out of the hands. I don't actually care. I mean, get the cell phones out of the hands of the kids. I don't care if they go in lockers. I don't care if they go in pouches in an office that's locked for the day. But the amount of resources, I mean, I don't know how you do this type of research. And this could be a whole PhD on like a whole doctorate could be done on this, but like how much time is wasted from teachers micromanaging the situation, which is not why they became teachers and is not what kids need from their teachers. They're not in there for that dynamic.
Yeah.
And versus hiring one personnel in the school just to manage the freaking cell phones, pouches, or whatever we're doing. Like, I do think in principle, it's up to the board in principle to lay out some philosophical understanding of we stand for teacher-student dynamic where it's relational, where we're not there policing people, where we're there to our primary, secondary, and tertiary commitment is to educate. And it's that's like a caregiver relation that I feel like we should try to avoid. And I'm thinking just for resources, yes, it's gonna cost the district money. We're in 2026. This is the plight we live in. Like this is what we are charged, I think, more so now than ever to like think about one-to-one devices. Like these are affecting the mental health. These are affecting how many social workers we need to hire, how many special education students we have. Like the research is out there, the data is there. And if we're like this progressive community, like let's be at the front lines of this. And I first of all, I'm very appreciative that we're talking about this, very appreciative of how we're talking about this. It feels like a very productive conversation. And I think that everybody sheds light. I would like to have the administration like really work on this rubric or this chart that you're speaking to that I have not seen, but it should be much more accountable, it seems like. And I think that we cannot put kids in positions where they have to choose between like social status and like follow. I'm just thinking about my own child. Like she's a rule follower and she would put her phone in the locker if she had the opportunity and the expectation set before her. But if there's peer pressure around her, I don't know what she would do. So I support taking the phone somehow.
And then even like in the hallways, like for the, oh, sorry, do you have your, I'm sorry.
And didn't Adam want to?
Yeah, well, I can go there, but Catherine, why don't you go and then we'll.
Just trying to envision the actual application and like day-to-day experience. Regardless of how what the holding device once you get the device from a child, how are you getting the device from the child, right? Like, and when you said like if everybody were bringing in bottles of liquor, I'm like, well, if everybody were bringing in bottles of liquor in their hand, it would be very different than if they were bringing them in their backpacks or bringing like mini bottles on the
Have assigned lockers,
person.
so you can tell if they put it in their locker.
No, but what Catherine's saying is, let's say they don't. I didn't bring it to school today.
Right.
I'm here in school. I didn't bring it to school. We're not gonna search kids. But then I think that's where the chart comes in. That's where the accountability comes in because we have less we have more kids. Well, right, more kids are following the norm.
Will be compliant.
Right.
And the amount of direction and support will be decreased.
Yeah.
And then the harsher the consequence, the less it happens.
Yeah, there's layers.
You take the phone and the caregiver has to come in and get it. Yeah.
And you need to pay attention to where behavioral disturbances go shooting through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to the whole developmental age and level, which is that, we can fairly easily take phones or other devices away from pre-K through 6. And after that, you're seeing suspensions, you're seeing teacher assaults, you're seeing perhaps.
You got that, where's the data for that?
My colleagues last
Life. That's the last 30 years of the school.
Joe, to that point, my colleagues last year who were, around the state in smaller school districts that really did take, like, they were like yonder pouches, strong, like menu of consequence, like progressive consequences, all of that active teacher involvement on the front end of communicating the expectations. They did say that the first 6 weeks really sucked. And it took about 6 weeks for kids to try every way to get around it, which is 100% developmentally appropriate. That is what teenagers are supposed to do. It was about 6 weeks of everybody struggling until kids tried and tested every boundary and found that they couldn't permeate the boundaries because the adults provided a united front in setting and maintaining the boundaries. And then after every break.
It
You
was
had
again?
to do it all over again. So that is the recipe from people who did it and said it's working really well, we're pleased with this from the teacher point of view. That is what it takes
So these kids
constant
had,
vigilance, impenetrable boundaries on it, everybody being on the same page about it, like it is. And it becomes a full-time job for the school community for a while. And kids need to learn that they can try everything and they need to learn that they can't get it.
Good things are hard.
But they have said that it's absolutely worth the time and effort and energy that they invested in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer. I mean, I think I just have maybe more questions. I mean, one question is, you know, can a policy win out? Like, can a policy of like a disciplinary policy win out over a removal strategy? Because obviously there's a cost.
We need both.
Well, it can be both. And that's another question. But one question that I have is if somehow a policy could actually be effective enough to work at a really, really, really high rate, you know, then the question is, wouldn't that be better than the expense of taking the phones and putting them in lockers, and doing all those things? The other thing I'm thinking is, you know, if at the end of the day, teachers and administrators are going to be policing, then I feel like they're going to be policing either way, right? Whether there are phones in a locker or not. And then in that case, phones in a locker would be a big help because there'd be way fewer phones. And then we would be starting by only policing a small percent instead of having to police this very large number. So I'm just saying two sides of the coin. Other thoughts that I'm having just to throw into the mix, I don't know how much control we're really going to have over caregivers. I'm not that excited about pulling that lever at all. Like, I almost feel like I don't personally, I think that's very difficult and maybe outside the purview of the school. Of course, there's things we can try and we can certainly provide some education, but I think we have more control of what happens in the building than outside the building. And then the last thing is just, you know, what data do we already have that would actually help us? That's just kind of a question. I'm not sure like what we would want to see. And I also agree with concerns that it could be an endless, you know, months and months and months of researching and questioning, and we don't really. I'm just wondering like what would satisfy the inquiry, and when we would say like, okay, now we have enough information to decide to move forward if we take that path. So I'm not answering anything, but these are just some reactions to the things that people were saying. And I'll call it Jake.
First of all, so where I work, we sometimes do this thing where someone says, I have a shout out, and then everyone has to say shout out. And I say the shout out, so let's try it out. I have a shout out.
Shout out.
Thank you, one person.
Should we try it again?
I thought
Go ahead.
Try it again.
Okay.
That's what good educators do.
Go ahead.
I have a shout out.
Shout out.
I just want to shout out generally this group that I really appreciate that. I wanted this more last year, and I am excited that it is happening where like people are having respectful conversations where there are wildly different opinions shared. And that I know that even as we have like these big disagreements and back and forth, that like we're all good. We're all like hoping for the same thing for kids, and that it is actually it is a functional meeting when topics are aired openly and like these things happen publicly as opposed to like one-offs as opposed to the other way. So I just want to name, I think that this is a very functional meeting and I appreciate everyone. If I were to alter Todd's proposal based on this conversation, trying to like take in everything that's said, personally, I would say, what if we directed the superintendent to provide an option for students to store phones with the potential for it to become a requirement as opposed to an option. Personally, I would advocate for a requirement, but I'm just stating like what if there was at the very least an option to solve the problem that Sarah and I named, which is that students have no choice but to have addictive devices. Instead of the language in the resolution that says that the superintendent shall provide the Board of Education with essentially a report on January 31st, I believe that the superintendent should report status at each meeting and data for up to the first couple of months. Because I agree with what Catherine said, that like the most important work happens in the first month or two. And I think making this something that the board is attentive to, because we know it's a pain point and we know it would make I believe it would make a positive impact for kids. And as well as, I think I raised this when I first heard the idea of gentle reminders. I just don't think that's how you solve a problem, but instead to direct that we have the immediate removal of the phone when they are seen with escalating consequences, not consequences that lead students to miss instructional time or anything, or like exclusionary practices, but escalating consequences, for example, like you don't get your phone back until someone comes and talks to us about it, or like maybe we make a plan that if you weren't storing it before, now you are. Those are just ideas of what Dr. Brown and his team might come up with if provided guidance, like what I just said.
I'm gonna let Emily respond to that and then do
No,
this. Oh,
I-
okay, Emily, go to the bathroom.
Just so you really
I
to
just-
go to the bathroom.
No, I just had, that's the only thing I have to do, I don't need to talk.
Oh, no. We can go to the bathroom now if you want.
Always go to that.
I wanna hear what Emily has.
I think the optional storage thing is like what kid is gonna
Yeah, I agree.
choose.
Yeah, I mean,
to
I
do
take
that.
it back, I was just trying to be nice.
Okay.
Nobody likes that.
Well, I think that's good.
No,
Spending a
no.
lot of money on storage things that aren't gonna be used.
Everyone should store their phones.
When I brought up the yonder pouches, I realized for myself that I'm very much responding to the locker idea specifically because I feel like I don't understand, like, I don't know, like, of other districts using them, I don't really, I have so many questions about, like, how we're actually gonna get kids to use, like, there's so many questions. Whereas I realized that if we're expanding the conversation to, like, locking away phones,
You like that?
the yonder pouches, and it's been a whole year since we, like, debated this. Last year, you know, when they first came out, kids were able to buy, like, things for $15 off of Amazon to be able to break into them. There were all these other things. But when I was at the NISBA conference, I talked to them, the yonder people, about it. Yeah, well, you and I did.
We were there, yeah, we were
But
taking
yeah.
all their slack.
Yeah, we were taking
Hey,
all that.
yonder. Yeah.
But he was like explaining, yes, I know this was a problem, these are the things we did, and I kind of at the time was like, nobody wants your yonder pouches, so we didn't really, I wasn't really listening all that much. But they are very aware, I'd be very interested to know, like, what steps they've taken since then. It seems like a more evidence-based shift, because at least we know that they're being used in a lot of places, and like Catherine, I've heard reporting and anecdotal evidence about them being somewhat more effective.
So it's more inaccessible phones.
What is the lock?
Because they're really locked up.
No, I mean, you're expanding it from the removal of phones to whether or not it's
Better lock.
removable, that.
They're
They're
locked.
locked away.
Yeah.
That they're
That-
inaccessible.
yeah.
And so I guess I was feeling so like, what are we talking about with these lockers? That I'm kind of acknowledging that if we're able to talk about it in a more kind of a broader way about, like, can we find a way in which we can completely lock away phones? I'm much more interested in having that conversation. I also, like, will just remind, thanks to my conversation with Sarah earlier, one of the most disappointing things about the decisions that were made by the executive team was that they bought these pouches without conferring with the board at all, and they were presented to us and shown to us how they worked after they had all been purchased, and it was kind of funny, like, we were shown it, we were all like, no,
No.
or many of us were, and then they were like, sorry, we've already bought these. So I feel like the waste of money, perhaps, from going from something like that to being like, guys, even you have acknowledged nobody's using these pouches and that they don't work. I would feel, there's a part of me that would feel more comfortable asking them to use something that's, like, already been shown to be effective in other districts. So I guess I would throw yonder pouches out there, or maybe there's something new now that I don't even know about. And I know.
No, I'm staying.
The data reporting piece, Jacob. I think that one of the challenges with the data reporting that we have right now is that I have concerns that one of the reasons that we're not getting sufficient data
Yes.
is because it's not being collected, not that we're not, I think that part of the reason we're not getting it is because it's not being collected. Having the high school principal come at some point last year and tell us that there wasn't like a single suspension and like that nobody's like, you know, getting these infractions is like, and then talking to teachers and being like, I had 3 kids out of my class because they were suspended, or, I mean, that's not related to cell phones, but like, I have a lot of concerns about like what's actually being put into a school tool. So I feel like before we can almost like I almost feel like we need like a data reporting so that we have a baseline of like what data is available, but not what data is accurate. And I don't actually know how to require them to actually input data because we're not there to, it's just like that's impossible kind of argument, but like we're not there to know. So I'm very concerned about that, and I don't know how we can better encourage or require the district to require people in school buildings to actually input the data when kids are being held accountable for things. And so that's a bigger question that I have no answers to, but big concerns about. And then the discipline piece, just like 1000%.
Is it possible to pull up this chart that we're referring to? Is this like a known chart?
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhere on the website.
I mean, I think the chart, like, if you were to see it, I think the best thing to say is. I think that what Catherine has said about like when districts take a more thorough approach is accurate. The way to take a more thorough approach is high accountability and high support. And the policy right now, the disciplinary steps right now are high support and no accountability or minimal accountability.
It almost sounds like the beginning of every start of school after break, we need to hire some extra floating staff to just be support around the cell phones.
I really like, I think that so much of this is like part, like in the cell phone policy and what we talked about ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Was this is a policy that needs to be implemented by school leaders, not by teachers. And so if we had school leaders, and I'm not saying that we don't, I'm not talking about any school leader in particular, but if there are school leaders that a teacher, every teacher trusts, can just pick up the phone and say, I've already warned this kid once, they had their cell phone out, and that school leader comes to that classroom, talks to that student and takes it. That's the piece that, like, teachers shouldn't be spending all of their time doing all of these reminders and helping kind of like, those are two separate
Right,
things
but
about
I'll just
helping
note
kids.
that that's also an infraction now on that kid and that teacher's relation, because they had to deal with that.
Thank you.
And that's a big infraction. It's like the biggest a teenager can go through taking your phone.
Right, but regardless, we could do anything, lock up
Yes,
phones, like,
but
we
if
don't
you,
need
if
to
you
do
get,
this.
but to Todd's point, like if you have less
Sure,
less
it's a
phones,
separate,
you have
but
less
this piece is,
infractions.
if we are going to have those things regardless.
Yes, and
And
that's why I wanted
therefore
the
we
chart
need
to
to
be
have
brought up,
that.
because just as much as I wanna talk about locking away phones as I wanna talk about the accountability piece, because I think that's equally, if not more important.
And if you do any research on other policies,
It's all about
90% of
accountability.
them I've seen were just like, infraction 1, you get a warning, infraction 2, it goes to the office, infraction 3, it's picked up and that's it. Whereas ours is this kind of like the very long.
Catherine, did you?
Thank you, Emily.
So
Is
I
this-
am.
Student respectfully reminded, student agrees to plan to put away the phone. That's the first reminder. And
It's
then,
those first reminders that what I'm hearing from teachers is that those first reminders last.
Right.
It's not
For the
one
year.
reminder.
Yeah.
When it's also just, it's not.
and what is
I mean,
it?
they're repeatedly given.
And repeat, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
It's
they
just
should
like-
But I think
Right.
the reminders,
Phone
like,
away.
you give a reminder when you. When they're, because we have an understanding that, you know, if 2 students start to argue with each other, I might give a reminder because you're in the heat of the moment. Like you're arguing, like you need a reminder, but this is something where no reminders are needed.
Yes.
The policy is clear.
Yeah.
I just want to pause it though, because Catherine was about to say something, so.
I was gonna say, I'm also feeling like a bit of discomfort and tension with the notion, I mean, like, any policy that has consequences does require enforcement, and we are using a lot of language around policing.
You mean like the word police?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but also, you know, when you said like hiring in some other people reminded me of how so much of this is relational and really around like the notion of communities that incorporate a community policing approach as opposed to just like a straight out strangers come in to enforce laws. Very, very different relationships there. So like, and then also thinking about our students who have come in and spoken to this issue, where our students from traditionally marginalized communities saying that they feel that they are policed when other groups of their peers are not being policed, which whether or not that is true, whether or not data will support it, if that is their feeling, that is a problem. And I don't think that any solution of how do you get students, what will work best for students, because really it has to work best for students. To have an entire conversation about what will work best for students, devoid of any students providing input, does feel like it lacks everything it needs to be successful.
I mean,
Which I realize if we're trying to, if this is a, how can we solve this problem by September, that is another layer of challenge to get student voice in.
yeah, just to be fair, it's not like we've never,
Oh, I
like,
know,
we
I
spent
know.
a year getting.
But
city
in the,
input,
Yeah,
that's
we
in
did.
the
also
summer last year.
but did the student, like I am going to assume, because I do not remember, that the students did not say in the development of the policy conversations, this is exactly what would work, and then the policy writers ignored it. Like, I'm going to assume that taking the input of students became part of the policy, and what we're finding here is that we're at a place where we're a year in, and like, this is absolutely natural. You create a policy, you try it out, a year later, you say, how did that work? And like, devoid of data, that is kind of a challenge. But students will be able to say what would work better. And I think that the chance of it working better is increased by bringing students into the conversation at this point as well. Like, bringing them back again.
Okay, I'm gonna go Todd and Jay.
If I ask my sixth grade daughter about if a cell phone is gonna burn or not, I've shown her all the data, I've explained her, she's like, Dad, you're wrong. I know the phone's not addicting, I don't have a problem, she can't put her phone down if she has it. No, but like I think getting student input is important, but also it's like, you know, you gotta ask an addict, do you have a problem? And they'll tell you no, right? Because like they don't see it from a different perspective. Correct me if I'm wrong, the students polled students, they talked to students, like the student reps. I remember Judah being like, hey, one of the biggest issues we found was like students are not gonna know who to sit with that lunch. And I'm like, hey, that's a problem, that's why we need to keep cell phones. And then afterwards he goes, yeah, I guess that really would be a big problem. Another one was like, hey, like, what do students do if their parents can pick them out for practice? I didn't have a cell phone, I played sports. You figure it out, like, those to me are not problems that we should actually be concerned about. We should be concerned about their education, how it impacts socialization. I remember my oldest daughter, like, we had a Halloween party. She was 15 years old, everyone had just gotten cell phones, everyone had social media, before everyone even knew the harm of social media. It's 21 now. Halloween party, it's dead silent, like, what is going on?
Oh.
She's very introverted, so I'm like, hold her out, I'm like, why, is everything okay? She goes, yeah, we're having a great time. What are you talking about? She goes, there's no one to talk to. She goes, yeah, we're sitting on the couch, we're all texting each other. I went in there, I grabbed everyone's phones, I said, you guys have them back to me then. And within it was silent within 5 minutes, all of a sudden they're laughing and they're playing and they're interacting. And I just imagine kids at lunch, and you're not interacting with the people, like, you're missing out on socialization, which is a big part of setting kids up for success when they get into the real world. You know, like, we should be helping them. This is where they learn how to socialize. It's where they learn how to meet. If you have a better relationship with a friend, you might be better, like more comfortable asking them to help us with you know, schoolwork after school. So I think those relationships are something that's getting lost in the conversation. That's a really big part of being a part of a public school.
I want to respond a little bit to Catherine's point, what Todd said. So I agree that student input is valuable. I guess I disagree on, is student input valuable on the things that we are discussing right now. If a policy is revisited every year, my mind, and we improve the policy, back to the three things I said before, which I have modified slightly, is what were the big problems, and therefore what are the easiest solutions? Problem one, students had their phones on them. Solution, students should not have easy access to their phones, whether through a Yonder pouch or a Bucker or whatever, I don't care. Problem two, we did not get sufficient, timely, I would argue at times accurate data around what was happening. So we solved that by requiring frequent reporting on status, data, and what steps are being taken. And the last problem.
Hear my rebuttal to that. So. Just when you're done.
Okay.
Thank you.
And lastly, a problem was that students were habituated to knowing that they could have their phone out at least once and possibly multiple times a day and not have it fading. So the solution would be to direct for not a gentle reminder, but the immediate removal of phones. And so I just think I worry with the discussions around should we get student input or do we need more data? Again, it's like those things, it's like I don't want input on that. I want the superintendent to get input on that, on how best to do this, right? Because that's when the student might say, hey, if you immediately remove, I'm a kid, if you immediately remove my phone, I'm gonna freak out. So great, what can we do to help that kid? And it's not let them have the phone, but it's a collaborative conversation that is so at a different level than the sort of conversations we should be having as a board. And similarly, I don't think it's student input around whether or not students should have their phone on them. The governor has already said, no, they shouldn't. Right. Where student input comes in is, okay, now that we're figuring out where to store phones, let's talk about lockers versus Yonder, let's talk about the fact that we don't know where to go lunch, or we've never played a board game before. Where are the board games? I don't know what it is. And it's not our job to know to a certain degree. It's just that gets, I think, too much into the nitty gritty. I don't think it impacts whether or not we should require that students have a secure place to store their phones, that we get frequent reporting, and that we remove phones when they are.
So I'm gonna maybe, if nobody minds, to decide that at this point we have all expressed our opinions very thoroughly. We've talked about a lot of different nuances and aspects. I think we just have a question now as to an action plan moving forward to end this meeting on this day and what we want to do. And we can entertain resolutions and we could vote on something. Somebody else could propose another plan forward. All options are on the table, but I'm not sure I think it's all kind of been said for now. I don't know if anybody disagrees with that or has anything to add that hasn't already been brought out. But I think the perspectives have been.
There's only one thing I have to add to something that Emily said about the data being brought back to the board. And I found, just as an audience member listening, there's a dynamic that is kind of poisonous to progressing our district, which is you want, and this book that I read speaks to this, you want the district to bring you the real data so you have a baseline to work with so we can move forward. So I think it's on us to welcome data that doesn't look great so that we can work with it. But if we're not getting any data, or we're getting data that's not representative of what's actually happening, that's a waste of everybody's time, and then we're shooting in the dark. So I really would encourage this board, outlook, and the district to hear us, bring the real data, collect it with fidelity so that we can go from there. Otherwise it's just an emotional conversation with philosophy behind it. That's what I wanted to say to that. And as for the action steps, proceed, that's it.
Because I don't have a pulse on how everyone would think about each one, personally, I would like to just motion each of the three things I described and see how we vote on them. But
Do we currently have a motion on the table?
No, we withdrew it.
All right,
we're about
thank
to.
you.
Sort of
Okay.
collapsed, crumbled.
But you're gonna read emotional out and I write it, so that
Yes.
people can see it at the same
Yes.
time.
And we could even wordsmith it like we did before.
Emily's great at that.
You're
You're doing great, Emily.
I have a what?
Go.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if you are able to answer this, but I know that briefly Dr. Brown indicated last time that at least a locker idea, he felt there wasn't even time for that to make that purchase or whatever. I don't know if you guys have talked about it at all or have any ideas, but do you? I don't want to even consider a motion if you guys feel like have actually looked into and know under pouches are back ordered, or like, I don't know, I have no idea, or if you would have anything that you'd like to relay since you were here.
Sure, I wasn't here when the pouches that we have were purchased, but I know that they were purchased with grant. I do know that.
Mhm.
And I do know they were the only technology that was available at the time that would suffice for what the governor suggested.
That's not true.
It is,
No, yes, it was.
it is absolutely true.
Yonder truck pouches were.
They were not available, they were sold.
They're back
we-
ordered.
we-
Oh,
we-
back
they were
ordered,
for
yes, but they were.
months, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons, and I think they work in a similar way, but I'm not sure. I
I
just,
just felt proud.
with that being said, your question is, can we get something else?
Like, do you even know, like, just thinking about timelines between
Sure.
now and the start of school, like, I'm curious if you guys have even talked about it or if you know anything about.
Sure, I don't, this sort of data would suggest, I guess my question would suggest what we currently have won't do what you're asking it to do, and is it a giant leap between what we have and what you're asking for? What sort of data would suggest that you're answering that question? What sort of data do you need? How do you clarify that data?
Yeah.
Who's gonna provide that data, and so on and so forth? That would be my question, because we spent, it may be grant money, but it was $20,000 for this solution.
Yeah.
And it's been a year.
I mean, I could come up with a list of questions that I would want answered,
Perfect. And-
but I don't know how you get the data. Like, I
Right.
wanna know learning time loss, I wanna know teacher satisfaction.
Sorry.
And how do we measure?
Qualify, well, we
Right.
don't, so all the data we have to go off of, I
Sure.
think,
Oh my
is
goodness. No, I'm
the,
looking.
is the stories about
So
cell
it's-
phones being
Sure.
out.
Sure, and I think we've had stories on both ends, so, but I guess the data
Yeah.
that is actually usable, that you can answer these questions with. What's that data? Who's providing it? How do we measure it? And how do you get an answer that's objective?
I think we talked at length about the data we were, sorry, I think we're like mixing up two conversations right now, that's a much bigger. Like, we talked at length about the data that
Okay.
we wanted originally and
Okay,
systems were set up in school tool, I think everything is there, it's more about actually
Implementation.
tracking it. But that's it, I guess, I think the answer is just we don't know yet, but I'm literally just wondering like. How much like shipping time are yonder pouches, like how much would they cost for the number of students that we have in this district?
It's not like
The
they-
yonder
it's not like they
pouches,
know.
what, and
It's not
yonder
like they know.
pouches have these like. Things that you would have to put in the schools, just as an example, I'm not saying it has to be yonder pouches, but that's more my, like, I don't wanna have a discussion about something that then. There's no way for us to be able to get before the beginning of the school year, anyway. So.
I interpreted I interpreted Dr. Brown's comments as based on last year, he knew there were difficulties. I didn't get the assumption that he had done research and based on. I guess like based on my limited knowledge, I don't have a reason to believe that there is no option available at this point in time for districts in New York State to have a more restrictive hold on cell phones. I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah,
It will be difficult to implement, but I don't think it would be an impossible resolution that you're creating.
Yeah.
Like I heard Dr. Brown saying that he had concerns about doing so effectively and making sure he was communicating with the right people, which is exactly what a superintendent should be doing, but I did not hear him saying it is impossible, or if he did say that, he might have backtracked.
and you have different problems we're trying to solve, and as far as like, I think we should say, hey,
Thank you.
have it done and implemented before school starts. They come back and say, guys, we researched these three companies, this one's gonna be September 1st, this one's gonna be October 1st. But like, if we just wait to have them do the research, we're gonna burn through a month. You know, like, let's just say, hey, we want it done by this date. It's not possible, it's not possible, right? Like, if there's shipping issues, we understand that. Like, let's set the bar high and let them come back and do the research and.
With an update.
So does that mean that the motion is actually directing them to do the research?
Well, I have.
No, to have an option that can be implemented before school starts.
You just said, but if they couldn't, then that, like, why are, like, are we saying the motion is either?
Well, let me say.
Well,
that.
would somebody like to make
Yeah,
some?
who's making-
And I
Somebody-
do, I desperately want.
Okay, yes, make your.
That we can then wordsmith, I motion to amend the policy
Current cell phone.
the current cell phone policy to require that students' phones are inaccessible during the school day. Something like that, like to remove the option of the Velcro pouch or the nothing, which then inherently is directing the superintendent to do something different.
Why aren't you just changing the like we make the policy, so why are you motioning for the policy to be changed?
Cause I'm just trying to get language on there, so.
We can you can change the sub.
Amend the current cell phone policy to require.
Motion to amend the current policy too,
I need to see the language of the current policy.
if that's what you want.
I apologize.
I understand why you would be motioning to do something we could just do. Like what we should then do is draft up alternative language to the policy.
So that's,
And
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
That's what we're doing right now.
He wants to change the policy.
Yeah.
The language in the policy.
can we copy and paste that into a Word doc and workshop it? Garrett, President,
I'm gonna
Yeah,
President Adam.
head out, I got constrained,
I'm sorry, Greg.
I think just procedurally, you understand you're proposing to skip the first reading and second reading, just draft policy now and pass it.
well, it can't happen anyway if you do.
That can happen.
Requires
That can happen with the
Well,
super
supermajority
majority,
is
six people.
You still have six.
What's that?
Yeah, I got six.
All 6 of these vote.
All six vote
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
So-
so I'm just asking if that's what you're gonna, so you're
Well-
just gonna skip the first, second reading.
Well, I didn't do anything, all I did was entertain motions and Jacob was proposing something, so he
I
is,
think somebody is proposing.
Jacob
Yeah,
is
yes.
proposing to
Vote
do
by
that.
independent.
Yeah.
So my only two thoughts on this is, my understanding is under the current policy, the administration is gonna present a report to us in September 1st. And then I thought that the mechanism built in was that September 1 was when we had review that we're talking about. So is the difference between having that conversation in September 1, which is what the policy says, versus having it today?
I think just to, I think the point is the administration was already required to present a review of the policy for us in April. And we realized in April that they actually didn't have any of the data to present to us. So I think the question for me, at least on that, is I don't know what we would be waiting for in September, because as far as I know, no adjustments have been made to the data that they're collecting or the ways in which they would be reporting to us.
Our former chair has.
Part of the legislation that was passed, states that they have to report by September 1, demographic data on discipline.
Right, so that's
the data.
so the data that's being reported to this, that's required to be reported to the state is not as extensive as the data that we as a school board had asked for.
Yeah, okay, I mean, I don't feel strong on this, I mean, my only thought, I'm kind of, we passed.
So you wanna vote yes?
No.
So you wanna vote yes? I was joking, Eric.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, I mean, it strikes me, lockers is already an option available to school building leaders. We passed policy, the policy, as best I can tell, is not being adhered to. Students have their phones in their backpacks, the policy doesn't allow that. So, at the September 1 date or sooner, seems to me you gotta go to building leaders and say, hey, but there's a policy already in place, that says backpacks are not a sufficient storage place. That's where kids are putting them. So step up. Adhere. And then it seems to me we have building principles for a reason. They can say, do they want a locker, or do they want this or that? But I guess I just don't feel that it's the role of the board passes the policy. We pass the policy. We got to push hard on the building leaders to adhere to it. And it's on them.
We were told by the administration, this is the best we got, we have short-term notice. We don't think this is gonna work, we're gonna wanna reevaluate, we're reevaluating, saying it's not working, let's change, so. I don't know.
I do.
Hang on a second, 'cause Joe had.
Very briefly, in my opinion, the reason why the building leaders have not enforced this in the way which the board may have thought it would be enforced is that there's a whole lot of incentive for the building leaders not to report disciplinary issues and behavioral infractions. And the incentive is if they were to be responsive to what we all think should be happening, their school would very quickly be identified as a school in need of improvement because of the high level of behavioral infractions, which is, we could say, well, that's tough, that's data we need, but we can also say principals have lost their jobs because of that, because their school was. And I think it's naive to not pay attention to that.
Oh, that's.
What kind of infraction, sorry.
No, that's yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out, but there's
Is there any doubt that the policy's not being adhered to? I mean, actually, is there any doubt that kids are putting their phones in their backpacks?
I heard my daughter talk about their friends that they put it, they said, no one used the pouches, we just put in our backpack. She listens to YouTube.
No, nobody uses.
Let's just be careful, like, again,
We're getting,
you're not allowed to put them in your backpack, it says, but you can put it in the pouch in your
In the
backpack,
backpack.
so kids would just,
no,
you know what I mean, like, I don't think we're like.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Then it's
Yeah, I
It's
just-
the dumbest device to spend $20,000 on. I'm sorry, a Velcro pouch, it's like a purse that goes in your bag.
Well,
And
there's context behind why it was done the way it was,
Yeah.
but yeah. Not
let's, see
Yeah,
there.
I will,
Okay, so,
Okay, thanks, Gary.
Thank you so much, Karen.
okay,
So, okay, to Karen, again, I'm just looking to propose a motion that ensures that students will store their phone in a secure way. That is either a device that they cannot open in their backpacks or not in their backpacks.
Can you say locked?
Well, I like that you said inaccessible
Yeah,
for the
that
student
was
throughout the school day or something
Yeah.
like that.
And so if the policy doesn't need to be amended, if we can just say motion to direct the superintendent to revise the practice of the City School District to require that students' phones are inaccessible during the school day.
That I can support, by the way.
Jill supports that.
Sorry, did I capture that?
I got Jill to change her mind on something.
motion to
I want that
direct
on
the
the record.
superintendent. Jacob, is that what you said, to revise the practice of the ICSD to require that students' phones are accessible during the school day?
Yeah, I think we should define inaccessible. I need to step out.
With all the-
I will be voting yes on.
With all the-
I need to step out.
But
You have to
need-
make your
we
own
need the
resolutions.
motions.
I withdraw my motion so someone else can, there's
Yeah.
a legitimate family emergency,
Yes,
so
I have to deal with.
You're gonna have to pause the meeting because we no longer have.
Okay,
Let
pause.
us pause the meeting until we have a forum. Is that just entail us sitting here?
So,
Yes.
but you cannot,
Okay.
yeah.
These pouches stop the internet from working once. the
Yes,
person's in
make
the bag.
it a scene. You're the 100%. You're so,
Are the
there's
lights
no,
off?
no, the kids are putting it in. Not her.
Okay,
Why don't you continue on with your proposed motions, let's get them all up there and then we can decide what to do.
so the second motion would be to direct superintendent to provide us a status report. For the superintendent or his designate with a status report on the cell phone ban implementation. For the first 4 meetings. And potentially, I mean, yeah, for the
But
first.
I do think we need to direct what we're looking for in that report. To the
To include-
superintendent.
Regulation.
Yeah, to include in there, I don't, and
Well, I don't know if we need to put it in the motion.
I don't think we need to include that, right?
We need to direct him, I don't,
This is the way we direct him.
it is,
Yeah, the
you
emotion.
can't just have a conversation with him.
This is my
We
experience.
can't, but a motion is
Okay.
probably more appropriate. And then my third one, and of course we can wordsmith all of these, is to direct the superintendent to craft again, whatever the word is, 'cause it's not a practice, it's not a policy, it's like what the district is doing. That involves the immediate removal of phones when seen. Like,
An accountability system.
yeah,
Could you repeat that motion to direct the superintendent
to revise the disciplinary approach to involve, like to have the immediate removal of phones and.
Yeah, there should be no warning.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm not-
think, I got, so I got, yeah, my intention there is to remove what I think is the problematic language of gentle reminders to solve it within the.
What if somebody says somebody else has a phone?
Teacher needs.
That-
Mrs. Teacher, Bill has his phone out. You look, Bill's phone is not out.
We'll deal with that in a
I
month
think
from now.
that would definitely would be a question
Yeah.
for Dr. Brown. and his
Okay.
Right,
family,
and I
Not
think it's
something
like,
for
it's
us.
not about perfecting everything today, it's about making a progress. You know, getting additional information,
I agree.
pivoting, adjusting, getting more additional, and then you're just, as the year goes on, we refine it. We can't solve everything today, but what are some big issues that we can make a difference on and then improve on?
And I
Like,
think.
because you're right,
my-
that is gonna be an issue,
my
but I don't know
hope
if we can
is-
answer that.
My hope is that these, at the very least, start a conversation that is more towards accountability and effective implementation of it. That is my hope. But all of these motions, I just am spitballing based on, again, the three big issues that I observed, which was kids have easy access to their phone, we aren't getting adequate reporting, and the phones are not, and teachers are stuck in an endless cycle of giving reminders, at least based on our policy.
Okay, my only concern here would be that it does not reflect my concerns about level of student development. And I think this is very, it's great to go pre-K through 6. And I'm wondering if we need to adjust based on that.
The current policy actually does,
Does it?
yeah, which would take it away. This first motion would make it so that it was, like right now for elementary schools, for example, it's like much more lenient and it's like. If they actually have them, they need to stay in their bag. It's like something much less so,
I just,
for that exact reason.
it's easier to take it away.
Well, I think
So I think-
that the issue
I mean,
in
that's-
the issue in elementary is less about phones and it's more about the addictive devices that we give students.
Well, I
So
agree, yes.
So I guess like what I would recommend is, I mean, I think that like as part of, when we have a board development session, we'll talk about, I mean, Adam, correct me please if I'm wrong on any of this, but sort of like agenda setting and items, and my belief is that like, you know, you would like request that be added as an agenda item.
I already have.
And that if it is the will of the board, we would discuss it.
Same.
Based on this conversation, I find it unlikely that less than a majority of the board would be interested in discussing larger school issues in the district. But are there friendly amendments to any of my motions?
Not amendments, but adding about what we're talking, we want the superintendent to report. So like, for example, one of the things that I'd be interested in is how many students with a 504 or an IEP use their personal device for assistance? I'd want that information. Emily had mentioned that. And I always thought that the school provided the support, so I wanna know really if that's a real like thing that's happening. Yeah,
Just an alternate perspective,
Yeah.
I think like. So I mean, I think like if we sort of like were to watch the history of superintendent reports, I think they're often very broad, right? They aren't necessarily on like specific data, specific topics. Which is something that I would like to see different for this year, right? And I have every belief that like it can be different. Personally, I would propose that rather than us right now try to say, here's what we want the status report on. I would want Dr. Brown or his designee to say, here's what we think would be information that you'd like to see and for us to give feedback on it. I guess I don't think we should direct that. I think we should see a proposal and then say, here's what I'd like, yes or no.
So how would you reflect that in motion 2?
I respectfully disagree. I think that like last
You disrespectful?
Yeah, no, last year the board asked for like the middle school data and there was a lot of pushback to get that. I think that the board needs to be a little bit more specific in what they're asking so that we don't waste time. Time is of the essence here and like we need to be very clear what we're looking for. So we can avoid that.
Do we need to have that answer today? On this motion. Direct the board to be able to adjust it as time goes on. You can ask us any question we want at any point that we want. You really
Yeah,
time
Make a
it.
big-
And I think it would
Yeah.
be responsible for us to do so in
Yeah.
August 11th.
Yeah,
Motion to direct the superintendent or designate to give a status report on the ban implementation for the first 4 meetings as per requests from the board,
Yeah, as per
as
guidance.
per
Or
guidance from the board.
As pursuant to board guidance.
Ooh, pursuant,
Nice.
I like that.
Without.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but Bob included a bonus motion down at the bottom that.
Motion to direct the superintendent to develop regulations pertaining to policy such that said device.
That's.
So all of a sudden, anyone's making motions?
When we lost a quorum.
Bob snuck in.
You got elected,
You
damn,
were in the
congratulations, Bob.
Bob's got a cider
Not
now.
you, Bob, other Bob. Sorry, go ahead.
Does that replace motion 1 or is that a?
I think regulations are the way that policies are officially developed and implemented. So probably it's best to talk about regulations around policy. I haven't been involved in the cell-phone policy up until this moment, but I think amending policies does require at least a first read, right? So I don't know if right here at this table today, you can draft something that can amend a policy. I think it has to go for a first reading at a minimum. And having said that, though, you can direct the regulations be developed by the superintendent. So I think BBK motion works to that extent. In relation to Emily's question about timing, I'm just, again, I haven't been involved in this. I'm going primarily on the basis of 30 years of capital project work. And essentially school opens tomorrow. This is the way we're already thinking about things. You know, we're trying to get things wrapped up as fast as possible. I would be very, very surprised whether it's lockers or the bags, that they would be ready on day 1. I think it is possible. It's potentially possible, but I'd be really surprised just in terms of timing. Does that mean you have to wait a year to get it done? No, but just in terms of expectations, I think that's probably that one is closing, if not already closed. As far as the data, I'm not sure you need a motion to direct anything. When we were here, it's been reported, we certainly know the board wants more information. Superintendent will be back in town in a day or 2. If there's any question, reach out to the board president. Try to be like, all right, here's the 5 things you think you are wanting. If that's different, we can have that conversation.
What's the downfall of making the motion?
Just in terms of potential for like what exactly are you directing it to?
Yeah, because I guess, because my thinking, this is really helpful, Bob, was very much around last year. I remember there was one specific meeting where I was frustrated as a board member and my inability to get what I perceived to be very basic information. But I think that it more falls to the votes of the board as opposed to the superintendent, right? Because we as a board could have said in that, like the majority of us could have voted to say, hey, show us the middle school data, but we did not. In fact, we did not have a majority to entertain the possibility of seeking.
We couldn't amend the agenda.
Yeah, so I think it is a different dynamic potentially, so I'm fine to withdraw motion 2 based on your feedback, Bob. So I guess I'm glad I left the room.
Okay, so we're left with motion 1 and 3. Which
I
is
don't know, I have PTSD, I'm worried about it.
Don't worry, Sarah.
You know, you wanna know
I-
something funny?
What?
The policy right now,
Yeah,
about exemptions, what we were talking about, all exemptions must be approved and reported by the school principal. When and where appropriate, staff will be notified of any student exemptions. The superintendent shall include exemptions in the annual data review and reporting requirements specified in section 6. In section 6, part of the annual reporting requirements is to come to the board in March 2026. I have misspoken and said April, because I think it actually did happen in April, but it was supposed to happen in March.
Yeah.
Which means that they were required by the current policy to already do that. It says in the reporting requirements beyond what's required by state law and for September, the superintendent shall monitor the implementation and effectiveness of this policy in limiting the use of internet devices and its associated impacts on factors related to classroom and school climate, student learning, student discipline, student mental health, in collaboration with school leaders and reporting outcomes to the board annually beginning in March 2026.
That's
So
an internet devices, not just cell phones.
it did.
Well, that's this
It's
whole cell phone
referring to-
policy is referred to as, it's defined in here as internet enabled individual.
So does it or does it not?
It's not computers.
It's not,
No,
okay.
it's in.
That's
Apple Watch,
That's
it's like,
It's
Section A.
So Jacob, that is a reason why I think you should keep your motion, since it was already a direction. And it wasn't there, we need to like reinforce this.
I disagree, I think, I disagree because I think that process wise, if it's there, again, that just falls on us, it's there. We have every right to follow up accordingly and we
Okay.
can.
It's up
I
to the
mean,
board to.
no.
to-
Okay.
This-
Okay.
One quick note around Bob's saying with capital projects. Quick research just on Yonder is that delivery time is 2 to 4 weeks. Once the contract is signed. I would venture to say that like, I think there are,
Ways.
ways.
It would be interesting to learn, like, somebody would have to come out here, put those like, I'm not saying it couldn't, but it's not just the delivery time, there's also like.
And I'm not
I don't think
advocating
people
Yonder
need to come and
specifically.
do
I'm not-
that.
Yeah, and in the end, right, it's like, we can only hold someone to what is feasible, right? So if a week from now, like you know.
There's nothing magical about the first day of school.
I-
There really isn't. Throughout the school year, we change.
As soon as possible.
That's what
Yeah.
Todd's been saying, set the deadline, set the
Yeah, say October
expectation,
1st, say
and
October
reasonably
30th.
readjust as needed
Well, it's
based
slightly
on.
different, slightly different, because if we set first day of school.
yeah, 2 weeks before school, right?
Or
No, but like,
not
or we
bad
keep-
for school, I'm
right.
saying it's okay.
Yes, and I'm saying it's okay
Adapt all
too.
the time.
Yeah, not ideal, but
Yeah.
it's
Not
not.
ideal, but we don't wanna wait another year.
So I make those
It's not a
motions.
process.
Do I have to read them again?
Yes, and then on the side.
Motion to direct the superintendent to revise the practice of the ICSD to require the student phones are inaccessible during the school day. Motion to direct the superintendent to revise disciplinary approach to have the immediate removal of phones from students who have them out during the school day. And motion to direct the superintendent to develop regulations pertaining to policy 5695, such that said devices are physically inaccessible to student use during the school day.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't normally do this. I think
You're fine.
your motion, JS motion is agreed. My quick review of the policy is that there has to be progressive discipline, It starts with. Right,
The warning.
you have to put it away, that's where it needs to start, that's what the law says as well, it has to be progressive discipline, so.
Well, the law doesn't say you have to give a warning.
I think there's some language in either the law or the legislative record, it's like, this is supposed to be warning. And then other things leading up to, it cannot be suspension from school.
Right.
It can be in school suspension, that's essentially the biggest penalty you can possibly get. So I'm a little worried, and I'm worried that JS motion 3 amends the current policy in a sufficient enough way to require first reading. Right, so there's nothing magical necessarily about tonight for JS motion 3.
Well, supermajority would still need a first, read. Is that what I'm,
Yes,
or wouldn't this be a first read if we, I don't know,
now this would be development.
this would be development.
Yeah, there's nothing that someone just said a great phrase, there's nothing magical about the first day of school.
That was me.
Oh, there you go. There's nothing necessarily magical about today for JS. We hear you, what you're seeking. Superintendent will be back, we'll go over it with him, then we'll start to gear up for that. And you can always say, you can set a date, or I've seen language before, it's like on a date certain or soon thereafter as is practicable, right? We'd all do deliberate speed, stuff like that, you can put into any language, at your desk as well. Okay. So maybe just JS motion 1 and final motion for tonight is what I recommend, and then you won't have any issues for someone saying it's not an appropriate change.
I'm fine to refer, yes,
So-
that make.
So for now, remove JS motion 3,
Yes, I'm
the idea
withdrawing
that-
motion 3,
okay,
with the idea that we would revisit it as a first read policy amendment if it was.
but
Are these two not?
They're the same. They are.
So whose words do you like best?
let's mush them together.
No, I like BBK, like,
Yeah, I like yours.
I think the first one was.
I don't.
Okay,
And
I'm
so
okay with
getting,
either.
Well, Jacob,
I
you're-
don't,
sorry.
from my quick research, I don't see anything about restrictions of not having progressive, I mean, it says it's up to the school district. But you can't suspend students.
And we're not talking
Are you
about.
reading the legislation right now?
No, I'm reading governor's page.
I know there's
Violation.
plenty of policies that don't have like a, you know, a warning when the phones come out, but if that is within our policy right now, then we would need a first read. Does our policy specifically say that students must receive a warning before?
This is what the policy says about interventions and responses. For example,
And so it's not actually in violation of our policy.
Is that the policy or the?
this is the policy, I just copied it into a document. I
It
can
says
make
it
bigger.
shall ensure a common set of tiered responses for the violation of any section of this policy.
Tiered, so yeah, we would, so I think we would be saying that like, because again, tiered,
You
removing
take
the
it,
phone as
you
the
give it
first
back to the
tier.
kid. You
That's
take
tier
it and
one.
you have the
Yeah.
caregiver come in and take it. And you,
Third is you, right, there's, that's
Take it.
here.
Yeah, so I guess based on
Who
that, I would
cares?
put it back
Take it.
number 3, because it's not a change in our policy. It would be a change in how we're asking the superintendent to practice the policy. So
Is that same person?
Yeah, yeah, no, listen, I'm trying to be really conservative so that can't be challenged, so. But if
being
it's the
very-
will of the board to be like, we want that change.
So unless someone has a if someone in their head, I know in our heads right now, we're thinking, will we vote yes or will we vote no? If someone is thinking, I will vote no because it's JS motion 1 versus BBK motion, then I am indifferent. Otherwise, I recommend we just delete BBK motion.
You're moving it, so.
I move JS motion 1 and JS motion 3 as previously read.
And this does not alter the policy.
It does not alter the policy.
So I can,
And why aren't we altering the policy and just adding inaccessible to the actual policy? Since that's not what it says. We're like strengthening the policy through emotion, is that?
That's the idea, I think.
Just the way my training is, my brain's working again, I have not been involved in this deeply. My motion, typically, board policy, if you need like extra stuff in the field. It's through a regulation by the superintendent, right? And he can do that more easily, but. You get what you want, I think we can get there.
We can revisit the question about changing the policy level. Sure, if we wanna implement these things now and then come back to the policy.
I thought a regulation was just, like the way that we treat them at the state level is like the regulation is just providing the details to how the policy is implemented, not extending the policy into something that the policy doesn't say.
I would agree with that, yeah.
And so what we're doing right now is extending the policy. Or are we
Well-
defining?
If the policy we just read, I don't think it prohibits. Taking them away as the first resort, is that what we're talking about?
No, sorry, I'm talking about the other piece of making,
Making
of
them
it
accessible?
only being.
Well,
Like the
there's a-
policy about storage, the policy specifically says,
I mean, they're supposed to be inaccessible. Right? Here-
yeah,
but even with the
It's
current
just kind of
lockers,
How to make it.
but the current lockers are accessible, they're supposed to put them in, they can still access it. The Velcro patches, they're supposed to put them in, they can access it, so a lock pouch would, in theory, if they actually put it in, prevent them from accessing it.
Gotcha.
Just then, like a digital locker would prevent them, saying they put it in, they can't get it out to the end of it. So this is just a more robust system to actually allow them to have access. Assuming they don't game the system.
And we can also assume like the good faith, like you're present for this conversation, you're understanding the intentions of what we're saying. Like we will as a board be, I assume, be giving feedback as we get reports for like what's being planned. I do want to name, I feel like I have to in the next couple of minutes going on, so I would love to see this voted on.
Please.
But that is my motion. I think Todd seconded.
I did.
Well, are we going one at a time? Let's-
No, it's the
She
whole thing.
advised that, yeah, so it's just.
Okay.
Call for vote.
Or
Discussion, debate, conversation.
Let me just sit, no, I'm kidding.
Please.
No,
I'm just saying, I haven't seen a single policy that hasn't allowed for a single, just warning of like, put your phone away.
really?
I have. So we have models.
it's gonna be hard for the first couple months until people get it, that Ithaca's serious about putting phones away. Like you can't, if you want your phone, put it away.
But that's
I
not
also
the same
think-
as inaccessible.
Yeah.
No, I'm just talking about this immediate removal thing,
I
like,
also just, Catherine's not here anymore, but I just, and this is like. When Catherine talked in particular about like, historically marginalized populations, I think that personally, I think that when there are warnings. What that does is it increases the likelihood that the kid who looks like the teacher gets a warning. And increases the likelihood that the kid that does not get something more serious. And I think that the most important thing is if we have something that is uniform, then it leads to uniform expectations as opposed to different tiers. And the thing that I feel really good about when it comes to historically marginalized populations is that it is New York state law is very specific, and therefore in Ithaca we are as well, that we're not going to suspend kids about this. This is about don't want the phones, and if you're really having genuine trouble, I have every confidence that in this restorative justice environment, we're going to be working with individual kids to figure out what the gap is. So I just wanted to name that. That's all that.
Further discussion? No. Comments?
No.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? Abstention? The motion passes. 5-1. Well, with that, I'm gonna conclude the meeting for tonight. Thank you for those who have.
Thank
left.
you.
Well,
Thank you.
to be continued.
Dom.